My British Empire. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 476. Peace in the second half of the year. Not long after Londoners learned that the Duke of Guise had been assassinated, the shocking news reached Paris, the most populous city in continental Europe. What? Francois is dead? Archbishop Charles de Guise of Reims, the Duke's palace in Paris, was taken aback when he heard the news dictated by the messenger, and even the calm expression he had maintained for a long time disappeared. Tell me quickly, what is the specific situation? If you omit a little, you know the consequences. The red-clothed Archbishop Charlie stared closely at the kneeling man. His gaze was cold and merciless. The messenger in front of him is the son of the Guise family and the personal guard of the Duke of Guise. His most important mission is to protect the Duke, but at this moment, Archbishop Charlie heard that his brother had been assassinated to death for no reason. Although he was extremely angry, he still asked calmly in this regard. The guard who sent the letter was already mentally prepared to face the smartest person in the family, so he calmed down and said in detail after the narration. There was a moment of silence in the room. The courier who was kneeling on the floor felt this different atmosphere. He felt flustered in his heart, his back was like a thorn, and his eyes were erratic. Although Archbishop Charlie had been staring at the serf's son in front of him, his brain was thinking very fast. What's the Duke's wound like? What's the deadly hidden weapon like? The Archbishop's icy voice sounded in the empty room, and the serf's son who was kneeling on the ground was startled, and hurriedly replied, I don't know the specific circumstances behind it. But at that time, the Duke's neck was injured, and what was shut was a thin arrow like a finger, like a long needle, and it was coated with poison, so that the Duke could not be rescued in time. Gone. Seeing his flustered performance, the Archbishop didn't care. He also knew that his image in the entire Guise family was even more terrifying than the Duke of Guise. After all, His Excellency the Duke is busy with a war, and he handles the entire family affairs, and the terrifying image is deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. Small poisonous needles? There are still forces in Europe using this hidden weapon. Huguenots? England? Or the Duke of Vendôme, the Duke of Montmorency, and General Saint André are all suspected. The Duke of Guise was assassinated, and the suspects behind him were not only the Huguenots, but also the Duke of Vendôme, the Duke of Montmorency, the Catholic triumvirate in Paris, and General Saint André, even the English across the sea. There were so many clues that the always wise Bishop Charlie became a little annoyed. It seems that we can only start with a needle-like hidden weapon. Frowning, Archbishop Charlie thought helplessly. At the same time, in the royal palace in Paris, the young King Charles IX and Queen Catherine sat high on the throne, staring at the front with expressionless eyes, without saying a word at the conference table. The Duke of Montmorency, Marshal Saint André, and other royal family members and nobles sat at the conference table, thinking about the news they had just received. The passing of Guise has indeed shaken Paris. However, under the high pressure of the Duke of Guise, many nobles had a hint of joy and unspeakable sadness. Sadly, the departure of the Duke of Guise is no less than the loss of a pillar of the entire Catholic aristocratic alliance, and its power has plummeted. To my delight, Paris, under high pressure, finally began to relax a bit. Everyone, although His Excellency the Duke has left, it is a great loss to France. The Duke of Montmorency was the former head of the royal family and the most trusted minister of Henry II. After the departure of the Duke of Guise, he was the best natural leader. Others don't know, but the Duke of Montmorency himself thinks so now. The Duke of Vendôme in front reports that the city of Orleans is back in the hands of the Huguenots. He has refurbished his troops and is stationed in Saint-Jean-le-Blanc, confronting the Huguenot heretics. After the Duke of Guise was assassinated, the Duke of Vendôme led an army of more than 8,000 people to withdraw from the city of Orleans, and stationed in the nearby city of Saint-Jean-le-Blanc around Orleans to repair and comfort the morale of the army. Of course, it is also possible that they are in control of the army. The Duke of Montmorency's statement as the first minister of course made other nobles a little upset, but given his prestige for so many years, he dared not blatantly oppose it. The past, after all, has passed. Just like the shooting stars in the sky for the current plan, we still need to reorganize the army, eliminate the Huguenots, and let the glory of our Lord shine on the whole of France again. In the end, Montmorency had already begun to imagine that he would quell the heresy, take control of the entire French power, and become the first family under the royal family. No, the war has already divided the whole of France, with casualties everywhere. Moreover, the English have already occupied Normandy and Brittany. The war can no longer continue. On the side, the Duke of Longueville immediately stood up and objected loudly. His eyes were as bright as two lightning bolts in his middle age. He has long, wavy black hair, and has always been one of the great nobles of the royal family's close clan. He raised his chin proudly. The pride in his eyes made it impossible to look directly at the Duke of Longueville. First bowed to the king and the queen mother, glanced at the nobles with proud eyes, and expressed his opposition without fear. After the siege of Orleans, the Huguenots have already suffered huge losses. So it is our best choice to conduct peace talks at this time. I am willing to persuade Prince Condé and General Coligny to make France a whole again. Clap, clap. As soon as the voice fell, there was a burst of applause. Most of the clan and nobles present had an expression of approval on their faces. In fact, the reason why the nobles agreed with the peace talks was that they wanted to end the war at a relatively low cost, thereby limiting the Huguenots to a certain range. Over the past year, the civil war between the Huguenots and the Catholic League not only brought the kingdom's finances to the brink of bankruptcy, but also caused heavy losses to nobles like them. The continuation of the religious civil war caused rebels and deserters to rampage in the country, causing heavy losses to their manors, and the leaders continued to flee. More importantly, wars and confrontations continue to consume the private soldiers of the nobles, causing the power of the nobles to decrease. The aristocrats who have read some books can easily conjecture by analogy. Isn't this a replica of England's War of the Roses? How could they continue with such cheap royal affairs? My Lord Duke's words are extremely absurd. We have always been devout to our Lord's faith. That is why we restore the glory of God and drive those heretics out of France and into hell. The Duke of Montmorency was naturally very annoyed at the Duke of Longueville, who opposed him, and immediately objected after he finished speaking. Think about it, everyone. At some time in the future, we will die under the prayer of the priest and meet the benevolent and omnipotent God. He will ask us why the bosses still have heresies, and what can we explain. As soon as God was mentioned, the nobles sitting there immediately became serious, and some even drew the cross on their chests and whispered in their mouths. Even Charles IX and Queen Catherine, who sat high on the throne, prayed devoutly. Seeing that the attitudes of many nobles began to waver again, the Duke of Longueville immediately became nervous and objected. The war cannot go on any longer. For the glory of our Lord, the war must go on. In Paris and Orleans, the issue of war and peace talks was discussed in both the Catholic League and the Huguenots, and in the second half of 1563, France began a strange period of peace. Chapter 477. Oxford University. Oxford University is famous all over the world. As early as 1167, Oxford University was founded in Oxford, Oxfordshire. Oxford is definitely related to cattle. Legend has it that it was the place where ancient cattle waded through the water, hence the name Oxford. Oxford. Before the 12th century there were no universities in England. In 1167, Henry II, the founder of England's Plantagenet dynasty, had a problem with the French king and recalled all the English scholars studying in Paris, so Oxford University was established by 1563. There were 16 colleges in Oxford, and thousands of undergraduates were studying here. Time came to late December again, and the city of Oxford became lively as the only university in England. Oxford University not only receives the attention of the church, but also the nobles and the royal family. In the second year after the official admission examination appeared in England, Oxford University ushered in a wave of enrollment boom. Oxford University used to be basically a place to train priests, and it received little attention, and there were only a few hundred students in the school. You can become an official by passing the exam, which has hit the minds of the English people like never before. Knowledge changes destiny. This proverb suddenly became popular all over England as a base for cultivating knowledge. Oxford University suddenly became a popular place for people to rush to. First of all, His Majesty the King issued a decree to take Oxford University from the Anglican sect and hand it over to the president and senior leaders of Oxford University. In addition, the royal family will subsidize £10,000 per year as food and clothing for the students. Then, in order to train its own priests, the Anglican sect still provided financial support vigorously in order to expand the family's political influence. The nobles also began to support some poor college students to expand their influence rather than looking for it from all over England. It is better to look directly at Oxford University and Cambridge University. At least the success rate is higher. As a result, Oxford University expanded its enrollment rapidly, and the number of students soared, reaching more than 1,200 students every year. After the end of the London official admission selection examination on August 8 every year, generally speaking, Each county will start a new round of examination qualification selection in late December. On December 27th, Oxford University was conducting a general mobilization of the whole university as the qualification examination is approaching. Most of the students have already returned to their hometowns, and there are only more than 100 people left to take the qualification examination for the place of household registration on the school grass. There were more than 100 people standing neatly. Each of them was full of heroic appearance, full of vigor, with red faces, looking excitedly at the high platform in front of them. On the high platform, a very smart 60-year-old man, dressed in a gentleman's suit, with a medium build and a big belly, was wearing a pair of glasses, waving his arms, and talking loudly. The scholarly temperament of the past dissipated without a trace, and now he is like an old man quarreling in the countryside, which makes people feel spectacled. Students, tomorrow is Oxfordshire's annual qualification examination. Tomorrow, 10 people will be selected, who can go to London to take the official examination next year. The old man stared at the eyes of many young students below, and continued, that is to say, more than 100 of you will compete with other people in the county for 10 spots. As the president of Oxford University, of course he hoped that all 10 people came from his own school, so as to save face no matter who successfully gets the quota. What I hope is that you can continue to strive for glory for Oxford University like your predecessors. The old headmaster looked at the students who were a little nervous by his words, nodded involuntarily and continued. In the audience, although many people were still listening on the surface, they began to discuss in private. William, are you sure you can get into the top 10? In the audience, a tall and thin young man with pimples on his face asked nervously about a young man beside him. The young man on the side looked bookish, of medium height, with eyes, long blonde hair, and a handsome face. Among the more than 100 people, his appearance was also in the forefront. He was lowering his head slightly, wondering what William was thinking about, when suddenly his friend's voice came from his ear, and he woke up from his thoughts, and said helplessly, "How do I know? It is conservatively estimated that the number of references in Oxfordshire will reach more than 500 people tomorrow. It is very difficult to squeeze into the top 10. I believe in you, William." The tall and thin man said confidently with a confused expression on his face, "In the whole university, your grades are also one of the best, and you have great advantages in Latin and politics. I have great confidence in you." William looked helplessly at his friend Brown's confident expression. There is so much talent in all of Oxfordshire. Who can be confident that it will pass? Even nobles do not have the confidence to win tomorrow. The two of us will take the exam together, then we will get the qualifications together, and then we will go to Paris to take the exam together, and become officials together. Ho ha ho ha. This is the real life. William looked at his friend a little speechlessly, and then looked at his proud expression. He felt that the contemptuous eyes around him were enough to shame the dead anyway. You are also a college student, don't you know the virtue of modesty that you should have? Hey! The principal is still on stage, keep a low profile. William tugged at his friend's sleeve, rubbed his face with his right hand, and reminded him in shame. Only then did Brown realize that this was in public, and he looked around in embarrassment, with mocking and sarcastic eyes, which made him want to dig a hole to bury himself in shame. Fortunately, the principal's next speech diverted everyone's attention. On August 8 this year, 400 people from all over England took the exam, and only 40 people were admitted. Speaking of 40 people, the principal couldn't help elongating his tone, raised his chin proudly, stretched out 8 fingers arrogantly, and said arrogantly, 8 people, 40 people, 8 people came out of our Oxford University, 2 more than Cambridge University. Suddenly, there was a sound of inhalation from the audience, and then there was a burst of warm applause. The applause lasted for nearly half a minute, which is not only a pride for the alma mater, but also a hope for the future. So, don't let your alma mater down. Next year, I hope to see your names among the 40 people. Gentlemen, please work hard. There was another burst of warm applause from the audience afterwards. The deans of various colleges also took the stage to speak, nothing more than some encouragement, and the whole morning flew by at Cambridge University. A mobilization meeting is also held, and surpassing Oxford has become their goal for next year. While the weird peace continued in France, in England, because of the county selection examination, the whole of England became hot. Everyone yearns for fame and fortune. Chapter 478 Marriage of Bureaucrats and Nobles. After the qualifying exam and the results came out, William bid farewell to his friends, left Oxford University where he had studied for a year, and returned home. The academic year at Oxford University is 4 years, starting on January 7th every year, with 1 day off every 10 days until June. After all, Many students are not able to afford enough living expenses and are away from home for a long time. It is time to go home. Classes resumed on August 1st. William just finished his studies again, turned 18, and then went his separate ways. Master William, the master told me to come pick you up. As soon as he packed up and saluted and came to the door, William saw his family's dilapidated carriage parked at the gate of the university. The carriage is open, and apart from some yellowing, the cushions are clean and tidy, and it feels cheap. The coachman was tall and thick, with thick arms, and his face was full of signs of time. Like a farmer, he is a servant of his own family, a groom, a housekeeper, and a guard. All right. William looked at the classmates who were also riding in the family carriage with some embarrassment. They were gorgeous and expensive, and he felt ashamed. Although he was a little ashamed, he still gave an N, lowered his head, and got into the car with a salute. Not to mention the gorgeous carriages of those rich and wealthy students, but in the eyes of those students who poorly carried their bags and went home in a public carriage, William's carriage was enough to make them envious for a lifetime. Master, you don't know, the original white horse is already pregnant, so I can only let this new big black horse come to pick you up. The mare is better, the stallion is too jumpy. Before William could speak, the housekeeper and groom of his family moved his mouth up and down, talking constantly and a little noisy along the way. Compared with the butlers trained by noble families, they are still too big. Helpless, William could only close his eyes and rest up. However, fortunately, this horse is not bad. Soon, the carriage left Oxford, and after driving another 10 miles, it came to a place called Burton Village. Since it used to be a fiefdom called the Knights of Burton, after the War of the Roses, the Knight family dissipated, and the name remained. When the carriage passed the village, the passing villagers cast respectful glances at him as a college student, which made William a little proud. Immediately afterwards, the carriage stopped in front of a country house. Red brick and white windows, large triangular window sills, sloping roofs, large chimneys erected, and column-style fences in front of the balcony. This is a country house style, Tudor style, popular throughout England. Outside the fence, a grey and white shepherd dog was barking in the direction of the carriage, while a middle-aged man and woman were waiting anxiously. Mother, father. After the carriage stopped, William jumped out of the carriage and hugged the waiting parents tightly. William, how glad you are to be back at last, said his mother, with red eyes, touching his arm, and looking him up and down. And his father William Sr. slapped him on the shoulder. Very proud, boy, you are very good, you have obtained the qualification, it is really a glory for me. Father, mother, how do you know that I am qualified? William was suddenly surprised as soon as the news came out. His parents who were far away in his hometown knew about it, so why wasn't he surprised? You know, his family is not aristocrats or gentlemen, but a yeoman who rents hundreds of acres from the nobles, and then runs the business, and lives by his good farming techniques. His annual income is only £100. He is considered an upper-class figure in the countryside, but he is just a farmer in the countryside. In the city, the news is blocked, so how do you know? Oh, the head of the 100 households and the head of the district told me this news, and some gentlemen and squires nearby also sent a lot of gifts, which filled the entire yard. Having said that, his father had to smile all over his face, then pointed his finger behind him and said. William took a look and saw that the yard of his home was full of gifts of all kinds, and there were a few new horses in the stables, which caught his attention unconsciously. Yes, young master, even Master Brewer in the village sent some fat pigs to make up for your body. The housekeeper and groom who had just put him down from the salute hurried over and said excitedly. Seeing this, William breathed a sigh of relief and began to chat with his parents. For a while, the yard was filled with a happy atmosphere. Since the birth of the official admission examination, those who have obtained qualifications in the county every year will receive gifts from gentry and gentlemen from all over the county. Especially the gentry and gentlemen near their hometown are extra positive when giving gifts. William qualified in the county, which meant that within 3 years he could go to London to take his exams without qualifying again. 3 chances. The chances of becoming an official are very high. It is worth betting. Once the family sat in chairs and chatted non-stop. Most of the time it was the parents talking and William listening. Boom. Boom. The butler hurried over to open the door, while William and his parents stood up, ready to welcome the guest. I saw, in front of the gate, a well-proportioned middle-aged man in high-grade linen came in, but he was wearing a butler's clothes. Excuse me, are you Mr. William Jr.? The butler glanced at him, bowed to his parents first, and then greeted William politely. Yes, may I ask? William was stunned for a moment, looked at his high-grade sackcloth, and compared it with his own, and asked suspiciously. My master is Baron Alston of Oxfordshire. He specially sent me here today to congratulate you, Mr. William, you have obtained the qualification with the second place." The housekeeper didn't look down on William's expression at all, but said in a friendly manner as he said that, when William was in a daze, a box appeared in front of him, and then the butler opened it lightly, and a box of gold coins dazzled his eyes. "Please forgive my impoliteness. Such an expensive gift. Please forgive me for not accepting it." William swallowed and looked at the gleaming golden wooden box. It was conservatively estimated to be worth thousands of pounds, but he refused with difficulty. He understood that although it was nothing to give a little gift, such a big gift made him understand that it was not normal. "It's just a small gift. Mr. William doesn't need to pay too much attention to it." But the housekeeper smiled and continued, "Our Lord Baron intends to marry Miss to you. These are just deposits in advance." Speaking of this, the butler showed a domineering expression, as well as that annoying and enviable sense of superiority, which made William feel like being given alms. Although marrying a baron's daughter was no less than reaching the sky in one step, William still wanted to go to London to become an official and then marry a noble lady with a higher family status, and he was a little conflicted seeing William's hesitant look. The housekeeper frowned. "The people are really lacking, and the conditions are still too low, Mr. William. Miss Anna is the baron's only daughter. According to the new inheritance law, the daughter still owns half of the property, and if she marries her, it is equivalent to owning half of the baron's property. The dowry is really surprising. Now, do you still need to think about it?" The butler looked at William and asked with a half-smile. Thinking of this, William is also a smart person, so he immediately agreed. "An unknown future, and the property and connections of the current baron, don't need to be considered at all, and all over England, such transactions are constantly going on. The bureaucratic class begins to merge with the nobles. You have me, and I have you. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 479, The Duke of York and Number 039, Escurs. Since the end of 1555, Sir William Celsey has been serving as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. He also serves as the President of the Privy Council of England and the Speaker of the House of Lords, for one term after December of this year. In 1564, he began the fourth year of his second term. At this time, he was only 44 years old, and he was in the prime of life, but the top of his head had become the Mediterranean Sea, and he had deep bags under his eyes, making him look like an old man in his 50s or 60s. Inside the Palace of Westminster, in the Prime Minister's office, there were a few well-dressed middle-aged men sitting there at this time. They just sat there, but they looked extremely powerful. The secretaries delivering tea all held their breaths. "Your Excellency, the New Year's expenditure budget is too heavy for us in Wales. After all, we only have more than 200,000 people." The elderly Ferris Alexander, who is the ruler of Wales, couldn't help being the first to speak when he heard the United Kingdom's budget for the new year. £50,000 is still too high. "We, Wales, are the least populated area in the kingdom. Please don't bully us." Seeing the Welsh ruler blowing his beard and staring, he was very dissatisfied with the new kingdom's budget proposal. As the Prime Minister of the kingdom, William Celsey suddenly smiled and said, "Your Excellency, you can't hide the situation in Wales from me. £50,000 is already the lowest result, otherwise it would be unfair to other regions. Who doesn't know that Wales, taking advantage of the geographical advantage of being close to Ireland, took advantage of the wave of Irish land development, and the ports in various places developed vigorously, and the annual tax revenue increased several layers. In 1563, the tax revenue had reached £80,000. We in Wales have finally become rich for a while. How can the coalition government wantonly exploit it?" Grandpa Ferris was still full of displeasure. Obviously, he was deprived of more than half of his annual income, and he was extremely upset the coalition government can't do anything about it. After all, the situation in France is unstable, and money is being spent like water. His Majesty the King asked everyone to accommodate for a while. After a few years, the original rules will be restored. As soon as he heard the word king, Ferris felt a little better. After all, His Majesty's majesty is still quite heavy. The Earl of Argyll of Scotland and the Governor of Ireland looked at each other helplessly and could only choose to submit. His Majesty the King is behind the support, and the strong position of the coalition government is fully revealed. But this kind of good life can only be maintained during this period of time. The lack of finances made the coalition government extremely distressed, and had to seek help from His Majesty the King. Next, we will discuss the salary of county officials. As we all know, prices have risen in the past few years. The standards set a few years ago are no longer suitable for the current situation. What do you think? As the Minister of Finance and the third Prime Minister of the Kingdom, Sir Anthony stood up, bowed to the ministers in front of him, and then began to preside over the next topic. Everyone also politely saluted the future Prime Minister, smiling to show respect regarding the sensitive issue of salary. You ministers are very cautious. After all, this is a matter of tens of thousands of officials in the whole kingdom. One bad thing will offend a large number of people and cause trouble for your future governance. Moreover, the level of consumption varies from place to place, as well as the taxation and finance in different places. Naturally, officials of the same level have different salaries. So, outside the office door, the secretary was making tea when there was a sudden noise in his ears, which almost knocked the tea out of his hand. He paused for a moment, and then calmly continued to make tea. This is a precious tea bestowed by His Majesty the King, and the annual output is only a few pounds. What's more, at this time of year, the office repeats itself, and it has long been used to it. In London in December, the sun rarely showed a trace. The mild and warm sunshine eliminated the damp and haze of the past. Today, the young His Majesty the King did not go to accompany his little lovers, but accompanied his queen, and talked affectionately with her. The young queen was wearing a loose white long dress and a piece of purple mink velvet over her shoulders. She was snuggling in the arms of His Majesty the King, resting her chubby face on his shoulders, with a look of happiness on her face. Smiling, His Majesty Edward, while stroking her bulging belly again, put his lips to her ear, speaking love words. The window was half closed, and the sun sneaked in, shining on a happy couple, bringing a little warmth to them. On the other side, little Prince Charlie, who was building a small palace with building blocks, carefully put the last block on the top, with his fleshy little arms trembling, his eyes staring at the boss, slowly carrying out the final finish. The corner of the little guy's mouth kept grinning as he successfully built the building blocks. Obviously, this made him very proud. After placing the last building block, the little guy turned around immediately, with a smile on his face like a flower, and ran towards his parents. Father, mother, look, I have already built this building block. The little guy couldn't control the tenderness of his parents. He ran towards the king and queen with small steps, and kept shouting, for fear that they would not understand. Edward raised his head impatiently when he heard the call of his eldest son, and was about to reprimand him, but when he saw his big expectant eyes, the reprimand immediately turned into encouragement. Well done, Charlie, you really didn't disappoint me. His Majesty Edward patted his son on the shoulder as he said that, and his eyes matched with encouragement. When the little guy heard his father's words, he immediately laughed even happier, and his eyes became crescent moons. Oh, my little Charlie, you are wonderful. But His Royal Highness was not satisfied. He turned his head and looked at his mother beside him. Queen Mary, who was nestled in the king's arms, immediately hugged her son in her arms, kissed him hard on the cheek, and said tenderly and excitedly. This made His Royal Highness the Crown Prince of the United Kingdom extremely satisfied, and his entire face became a flower. Little Charlie, would you rather have a younger brother or a younger sister? Edward asked softly, stroking his son's long light brown hair. The little guy imitated his father, held his forehead, pretended to think for a while, and then said decisively, brother, I hope to have a younger brother. He opened his bright eyes, looked at his mother's bulging belly, and said loudly, with my younger brother, I can be a knight, he is a servant, and then we will fight together. In the end, the little guy broke away from Mary's embrace, picked up a wooden sword from the ground, waved it around a few times, raised his chin, and said arrogantly. Seeing this, His Majesty the King and the Queen looked at each other and smiled, and the room was filled with a warm atmosphere. Looking at Mary's belly, if it was a son, His Majesty the King suddenly felt sympathetic to his second child. The eldest is the Prince of Wales, the Duke of Cornwall, and the second is the Duke of York. This comes from the curse of the Duke of York circulating on the internet since 1461. The great-grandson of the first Duke of York inherited the throne and became Edward IV. None of the 10 Dukes of York in history could be hereditary. They either inherited the throne or died without heirs. For example, the princess of the 21st century, her second son, Andrew, Duke of York, has only 2 daughters and no male heir. The title will be revoked. The Duke of York will die again. Chapter 480. A different black slave. Boom. A 2-masted galleon of about 300 tons suddenly crashed into the pier as if out of control, and the splash of water directly with the pier trestle, and several unlucky dock workers were directly drenched. Who is so rude? How dare you be presumptuous in Southampton Port? A passing businessman opened his mouth wide and exclaimed softly, I don't think I'm presumptuous. I'm afraid there is something wrong with the steering. A sharp-eyed person looked at the swaying ship, then at the panicked sailors on board, and couldn't help but say on the boat. The captain, who had just berthed, was covered in cold sweat, and he breathed a sigh of relief after the boat stabilized. Fortunately, it stopped in time, otherwise it would have been a big joke. However, it caused a lot of trouble just now. The captain wiped his sweat, walked out of the cabin, came to the deck, and began to deal with the accident just now. Call your captain out. I don't have the time to chat with you. Sure enough, the moment he stepped onto the deck, he saw a middle-aged man with a big belly and wearing a blue uniform. He was raising his chin, and arrogantly reprimanded the first officer in front of him. I don't care what Hawkins family's ship you are, even if it is a nobleman's ship, you have to pay compensation for the loss just now. Please forgive us for our rudeness, Mr. Magistrate. Seeing this, the captain hurried over, saluted and apologized softly. I will definitely compensate for all the losses, and there will be absolutely no delay. Seeing the captain, who had just come out, apologize in a low voice, the sheriff's expression softened. He didn't want to provoke the Hawkins family, who had great influence on the sea in the southwestern counties. Okay then. This is the last time. I will never let you go lightly next time. After receiving a considerable amount of money, the magistrate immediately calmed down and ordered, before leaving, go to the public security department to pay the fine as soon as possible, otherwise it will bring you trouble. The captain sent off the vampire-like sheriff with a smile, then turned around, and yelled at the watching sailors, hurry up and arrange the goods. The tax officer will come again later. I don't want to be blackmailed again. Speaking of this, the captain showed a disgusted expression, full of bad luck. The money he lost today was all deducted from his dividends, so he lost a lot. In a bad mood, he walked slowly into the cabin, feeling distressed as he walked. Yaha! Slammed the door. At this moment, there was a sound next to his ear, and when he looked up, a group of black people all over in black were looking at him angrily, baring their teeth and claws, as if they wanted to eat him. Average. Only then did he realize that he had reached the depths of the cabin. Regardless of the hateful gazes of these black people, he stared unscrupulously at the naked, Lua, young girl among them. The remorse in his eyes had dissipated a lot. These blacks, but he got it by robbing a Portuguese merchant ship, and it is said that they are dedicated to the nobles in Portugal, and the price is not cheap. Sure enough, it's very different from ordinary black people. The skin is really smooth and tender, even smoother than that of a noble lady. Looking at the 20 or so tall black men with hatred in their eyes, he murmured, where are you from? He asked, recalling the Portuguese he had learned. After all, it is dedicated to the nobles, so you should know some Portuguese. White people, let us go. Suddenly, one of the black girls with a chest like a ball said loudly, oh. The captain became interested. He looked at the black girl who spoke, and took a hard look at her face. Her face was no different from the noble ladies he had seen, except that it was slightly flattened, and her complexion was also carbon black, but that kind of light black. In his aesthetics, she was also a beautiful woman. Negro, you are all my captives now, and I am going to sell them for a good price? How can I let you go? The captain looked greedily at her protruding figure, and then at her big eyes, feeling a little pity. However, there should be quite a few nobles in England who like this taste, and virgins can be sold for a good price, otherwise they have to enjoy it in advance. Sir, does your wanton human trafficking conform to the teachings of our Lord? The girl stared at her big eyes, revealing black and white pupils, and asked angrily, unexpectedly, you are still a Christian? The captain was a little surprised that the black man in front of him believed in Christianity, but he immediately laughed. However, your future is to be sold and has nothing to do with Christians. After finishing speaking, the captain seemed to lose interest in the matter of Christians, so he immediately turned around and chose to leave. Manla, what should we do? Beside the beautiful girl, a girl with the same light black skin but a slightly smaller chest asked out loud, there is no other way, we have to wait. The girl named Manla turned her head helplessly and replied, waiting for what? Wait for a chance. A chance to escape, my lord, this is our wish, please accept it. The captain quietly put a bag of silver coins into the tax collector's pocket, and laughed softly, you're welcome, this is my duty. The tax officer grinned and said with a smile, without any intention of refusing while smiling. The tax officer swept his eyes around, constantly checking for any prohibited items. Slowly walking into the depths of the cabin, the tax officer suddenly widened his eyes, looked at a group of black people in the cage ahead, and asked in surprise, what are these, my lord? "This is a black man we bought from outside and is going to sell it to noble lord." The captain quickly explained when he saw that the tax officer's eyes and tone were not right. "My lord, we are not black slaves, we are Christians, we are all Christians." Manla, with a huge chest, saw a very imposing man approaching, and quickly opened her voice, shouting in Latin HMPH. The tax officer snorted coldly. As an official, he certainly knew some Latin. He turned his head, looked at the trembling captain, and said, "As I remember, the Hawkins family only has subscription certificates for pagans, and they don't sell subscription certificates for Christians." "Well, my lord, I don't know they are Christians." The captain, who seemed to be smiling but not a smile, stared at the black-skinned girl fiercely, and stammered, explaining in order to manage the slave trade, the United Kingdom government classified Christians and pagans and sold slave trade rights to make money. "Don't say any more, please explain to the court later. These slaves are all confiscated and used as physical evidence." The tax officer looked coldly at the trembling captain in front of him, and said bluntly, after finding out this other case, he was one step closer to being promoted. The tax official had a cold face, but he thought excitedly in his heart. Chapter 481 Ethiopia. Ever since John Hawkins led the family fleet to capture black slaves in Africa and sell them to Little Spain, Caribbean, the declining Hawkins family immediately prospered. What followed was the spewing out of slave traders, who went to Africa one after another, with boats and manpower, to capture or exchange black slaves, and then brought them to the Caribbean and South America in Portugal to provide manor owners with high-quality goods. Cheap slaves. Under the premise of receiving a large amount of taxes, the royal government acquiesced in the behavior of slave traders, and allowed slave traders to transport Eastern Europeans and blacks to England to supplement the increasingly scarce human resources. Black people have a lot of demands. Men can only be castrated, while women have no other requirements except paying higher taxes. The captain watched helplessly as the black beauty he robbed was confiscated by the fat tax collector in front of him, not to mention how sad he felt. What made him even more sad was that next, he not only had to go to the public security department, but also had to accept the questioning and trial of the court, which made his mood drop to the bottom. Soon, more than 20 light-colored black women with graceful figures and protruding backs were pulled out. They stood on the deck with panicked faces, looking at the white man pointing in front of them, feeling extremely nervous. The sailors looked at the black beauties who were hidden deep in the cabin, drooling one by one. Although they had black skin, they still fit their aesthetics. For the sailors who had been wandering at sea for several months, they salivated. 3 feet, not only them, but even the tax officer opened his mouth wide and looked at them straight in surprise. To be honest, he has been a tax officer for many years and has seen countless blacks, but this is the first time he has seen such a beautiful black woman. Big eyes, a silhouette similar to that of a Caucasian, slender and round thighs, a delicate waist, and that plump body. In addition to the light black skin, there is a leisurely style revealed on his body, which makes him attracted unconsciously up, especially now that it is April. The exposed arms and skin of the woman wearing animal skins are extremely smooth and delicate, attracting a lot of attention. "Where are you from?" the tax official asked, swallowing, knowing that they can speak Latin. The tax officer exhausted his brain, recalling the Latin in his brain, and asked with a smile that he thought was friendly, "I am a Christian from Abyssinia, my lord, please let us go, for the sake of the Almighty Lord." At this time, a pair of slender thighs stepped out, and a huge woman with chests as big as 2 coconuts stepped out. Her chest was dangling, attracting all eyes, but she, as a black man, performed a Western lady's salute in a rigid manner, which looked very funny. "Oh, it turned out to be an Abyssinian, please forgive my impoliteness." The tax officer looked at this black woman, who was considered a great beauty no matter whether she was black or white, although she didn't know where Abyssinia was. But still a gentleman returned the gift. "But, it's a pity, miss, we don't decide on your identities at the moment. I can't release you, of course." The tax officer refused without hesitation. "This is not his right. Now they should belong to the court." "But, my lord, we are Christians, not pagans. And we are not slaves." Manla retorted stubbornly. "Yes, I know, but I still can't make up my mind," said the tax official, still unable to retreat. "My lord, my father is a great nobleman in Abyssinia. If you let us go, you will get a huge bounty, I promise." Hearing this, black aristocratic lady who didn't know where she was continued to explain. Although the tax officer wanted the bounty very much, he became a little impatient. "Shut up, noble lady from Abyssinia," the tax official said with a cold face. "This is England, Not your Abyssinia who doesn't know where. Please shut up now. In the last sentence, his voice was extremely loud. Even if the people around couldn't understand, they were still intimidated by his aura. Abyssinia, this is interesting. Suddenly, a teasing voice suddenly sounded in the ears of the irritable tax officer. Just as he was about to scold him, he turned his head and saw that someone on the deck was coming at no time. A group of people, a young man dressed gorgeously and wearing a yellow cloak came over, with sword eyebrows and starry eyes. Unconsciously, he carried the aura of a high-ranking person, and he was the one who made the voice just now, and beside him were a few middle-aged men who were also full of aura, like the guards of stars, standing by his side with a little respect, laughing with him. From the looks of it, he looks like a son of a nobleman, and he is also a big nobleman. The scolding immediately turned into a tactful refusal to greet. Sir, I'm working here, please take a step away. I want these people, so I don't need to trouble you anymore. The young man said with a smile, staring at the plump and colorful black beauties. The tax officer was furious, and the people in the court dared to snatch it. So what? Here, sir, these people belong to you. This is, a middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s suddenly walked out beside the young man, with some gray hair on his head, walked over with a serious face, and pulled out his arms. A token came out blood red, the surface is engraved with patterns, the size of a palm, and a string of letters blood, are engraved in it. Seeing this, he was startled, a cold sweat broke out on his back, and his attitude became more polite. Please forgive my impoliteness, I still have important things to do, so I'm leaving first. Under the surprised eyes of everyone, the tax officer laughed and led his men back slowly. The young man nodded, stopped looking at him, and went straight to the group of brunette black women, looked at the bulging chest of the woman who couldn't argue, and asked with great interest, "Are you really from Abyssinia?" Manla looked at the fat-headed, white-eared young man who frightened away the fat-headed white man, then looked at his high-end clothes, hesitated for a moment, and replied slowly, "Yes, my lord, we are indeed from Abyssinia. We are daughters of nobles. If you let us go, you will definitely get a huge bounty." Regarding the bounty, the young man was non-committal, but looked at them carefully, and said with a smile, "No, Miss Noble, you are all my slaves now. Money is not what I need." It was a big joke that the young king would be short of money, but he valued the group of black women in front of him. He didn't expect that when he inspected the Navy's newly built large dock in Southampton, he would have a different harvest, because another name for Abyssinia is Ethiopia. Chapter 482 Privateering License. Since the establishment of the Pope's Meridian, Portugal has focused on the spice trade in the East. Especially in recent years, it has defeated the Arabs and the Ottoman Empire, established the hegemony of the Red Sea, and monopolized the spice trade in the East. Portugal's spice business is even more prosperous every year. Portugal exports more than 20,000 CWT, 50.8 kg, of spices to Europe, and the price per CWT ranges from 50 to 100 ducats. That is to say, the annual trade volume of Portugal reaches millions of ducats. The specific income cannot be tested, but the Portuguese royal family has an annual net profit of 500,000 ducats. If taxation is added, the income of the Portuguese government has reached an exaggerated amount. For example, from the point of view of smell, the smell of pepper can promote appetite. From the point of view of taste, pepper is used in food, which can remove the smell of fishy smell and make thick meat soup. Spices can not only be used as condiments for food, but also to satisfy the appetite. More importantly, in addition to seasoning, Europeans believe that they generally have a role for a long time in history, stimulating, zing, desire, or remind, love. How can such a business with such a wide audience and great influence be allowed to be monopolized by the Portuguese? Manla, do the Portuguese have a lot of power in your place? His Majesty the King looked at the dangling giant in front of him, and suddenly felt the displeasure of the black girl in front of him, and was a little embarrassed. After that, he looked at the girl's black and white eyes, recalled his previous life, yellow skin, black eyes, and after a daze, he hurriedly asked, "My lord, there are only a few hundred people in Portugal, but they have weapons that can shoot thunder and fire, and they are surrounded by many nobles who believe in Catholicism. Their empire is very powerful." The girl glared at the unidentified noble youth in front of her. If anyone in the empire would dare to look at her like that, he would have swung his whip long ago. It's a pity that this place is very far away from her home, very far, far away. Seeing the girl gnashing her teeth, Edward thought she hated the Portuguese for abducting her. There is a little sympathy in my heart from a nobleman to a slave. The gap is indeed huge, and it is difficult for ordinary people to accept. Miss Manla, I'm sorry for what happened to you, so I have a proposal to let you get free early." The young king looked at her plump body, delicate face, and those slender and plump thighs, which made Edward's heart flutter, quickly sorting out his mood. Edward asked seriously, "Of course, my lord, do I have other choices?" Manla bit her lip, staring at her black and white eyes, and said pitifully, "I just need you to write a letter and introduce my people to your majesty the emperor, then I will give you back my freedom." "What about the others?" "I demand that the others who are within you must also be free." Manla bit her lip as she thought of freedom and thinking that her sister was still in the hands of the nobleman in front of her. "Yes, they will also be free, but they need the equivalent of gold as a ransom." Edward said with a bit of heartache, "Okay, I agree to your request, I just hope you don't break your promise." Manla said solemnly, looking at the lecherous and lazy noble young man in front of her. "Very well, miss, this is the most correct choice for you." His Majesty the King looked at the stubborn and clever black woman in front of him, and said with a smile as soon as he turned his head, he understood that the other black women were all noble ladies. If they were brought back, they could bring great benefits to her and her father, and it was worth the risk. "Wait. These interests will come after we go back. Freedom is not worth the risk right now. Among the remaining people, there must be people with important identities." Noticing a lucky smile on Manla's face made Edward's head squeak. Thinking of this, the young king immediately showed a mysterious smile, which made the black beauty next to him panic. Boom! At this moment, the carriage suddenly shook, and His Majesty the King's head slipped off the maid's lubricated thigh. "What's the matter?" His Majesty asked angrily. "Your Majesty, the road is uneven and there will be bumps. Please pay attention." The guard on the side immediately replied loudly, his tone trembling, obviously also angry with this road. Seeing this, Edward immediately got up from the maid's lap, walked out of the carriage angrily, and looked up at the national road in front of the carriage. I saw that the national road, which was wide enough for 8 horses to go straight, was full of potholes at this time, some of which exposed stones, and some of them were full of stagnant water, like pockmarks on a human face, which made people feel disgusted. "Are you still in Hampshire now?" Edward asked with anger rising in his heart. "Yes, Your Majesty, we are still in Hampshire." Guy Ham replied hastily. "Okay. The central and local finances have invested so much money just to build national highways across the country. It's really an eye-opener for me to see what happened in Hampshire." His Majesty the King looked at the endless straight and wide national road in front of him, which has always been one of his proud achievements, but now, the pockmarked potholes on it were slapping his face hard, hard and hard. "Don't they think this is the old England? Today I will let you see what is real centralization and what is absolute monarchy." Edward gritted his teeth, as if a pot of hot soup was boiling in his heart, about to boil. "Guy Ham," he ordered sharply. "Yes, Your Majesty." Guy Ham looked at His Majesty's furious appearance and had a bad premonition in his heart, so he immediately agreed. "Immediately send a letter to the Palace Intelligence Department, telling Jack to come to Hampshire immediately, and you cooperate with him to investigate this matter on the National Highway, and investigate it hard for me." "Yes, Your Majesty." Guy Ham showed a wry smile, and he knew that something big was about to happen. In the past, such cases were investigated by the Palace Intelligence Department, but this time blood blades were added. It seems that His Majesty the King is quite angry. In this way, after giving an angry order, His Majesty the King returned to the carriage and began to enjoy a bumpy journey, which finally stabilized in Surrey. As soon as he returned to London, His Majesty the King seemed to have forgotten about this matter, and began to hold a royal meeting to discuss the colonial strategy of the United Kingdom. Regarding this, the courtiers discussed it enthusiastically, and they all said that it is very feasible to attack the eastern trade with the current naval strength of the United Kingdom. Not only England is dissatisfied with Portugal's monopoly on eastern trade, but even Spain and France are salivating in this way. The Cabinet of the United Kingdom reached a consensus that it is imperative to break through Portugal's eastern monopoly. The existence of the Zaragoza Treaty and Portugal's powerful navy made it difficult for the United Kingdom to shake in this way. Joining Spain to force Portugal to make concessions has become the most feasible strategy at present. However, the treaty signed between Spain and Portugal is the basis of the current colonization of the two countries and cannot be easily broken in this way. His Majesty the King remembered the famous British pirate policy and said loudly, "If the Portuguese don't agree with us going to the east, then I will let them lose everything." Therefore, on this day, the private license was born in the cabinet, and the royal pirates also appeared on the stage of history. Chapter 483. In Madrid, in the new royal palace, the King of Spain is discussing the expedition with his Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance and the Duke of Avar. After half a year of preparation, The 20,000 Spanish army has been prepared and ready to move out, and what is currently being discussed is the aftermath of the Netherlands. No one, including His Majesty the King, doubted the army's suppression of the Netherlands, and the discussion was only about the aftermath. Your Majesty, the prosperous Netherlands is Spain's dairy cows, not the usual beef cattle. Finance Minister Roy Gomez de Heer opened his eyes wide, looked at Philip I sincerely, and said sincerely. HMPH, Duke of R sneered, and said dismissively, "My lord, you have to be clear that the Netherlands is only the Netherlands in the hands of the kingdom, and the Netherlands that does not exist in the hands of the kingdom, no matter how prosperous it is just a landscape." Philip I watched the two trusted ministers argue again, and couldn't help feeling a headache again. Okay, the Duke of Avar who is going on this expedition, then the governor of the Netherlands is also him, and the affairs of the Netherlands should be handed over to him. Hearing this, the Minister of Finance glared at Duke Avar reluctantly, and then reluctantly agreed. On the other hand, His Majesty the Palace Prime Minister looked at ease, as if all this had nothing to do with him. Your Majesty, the young guard knocked on the door. "Come in," the king said. "See you, the ambassador of the government of the United Kingdom in Madrid." Anyone with a discerning eye can see that Madrid has become the political center of the entire Kingdom of Spain. So most of the ambassadors have also been transferred here for convenience. "Why do the English see me?" Philip I was a little puzzled. "Your Majesty, since the ambassador of England is asking to see you, there must be something important, so it's better to meet him." The Minister of Finance suddenly spoke out, persuading him. "Then let's meet." Philip I glanced at the Minister of Finance and said with a smile. Soon, a gentleman with a short beard and light yellow wavy hair came in. He first saluted Philip I, and after a few greetings, he explained his intention. "Your Majesty, Europe has been exploited by Portugal for a long time. My king wants to work with your country to break Portugal's monopoly on Eastern trade and create a fair business environment to benefit the people of the two countries." Facing Philip I, Mr. Ambassador said solemnly, claiming that it was for the benefit of both countries. As soon as this remark came out, Philip I and the ministers were directly surprised. It is astonishing how daring the English have been in joining forces to challenge Portugal's trade authority in the East. Philip I's mind immediately began to think about the benefits of breaking through the Portuguese blockade, and large sums of gold coins entered the treasury, especially since I am about to send troops to the Netherlands. It is so important to have a source of cash on the basis of not being able to get the tax from the Netherlands for the time being. However, Eastern trade is far from quenching thirst, and the Portuguese have monopolized Eastern trade for many years, and it is very difficult to break it. Especially when he has to invest in the navy to fight the Ottoman Empire, let alone push Portugal over. "Sorry, Your Excellency the Ambassador." Philip I shook his head and said with a little apology, "While gold is tempting, it's not worth it compared to fighting Ottoman pagans at present. For our country, it is more beneficial to continue to maintain the Zaragoza Treaty. We have no possibility of changing it at present. In this case, then I will resign, and hope to have the possibility of cooperation with your country in the future." Your Excellency the Ambassador felt a little dejected at once. It is indeed a pity that a good opportunity to make merit has passed away from his hands, but he still kept a faint smile on his face, and retreated politely. The Chancellor of the Exchequer looked at the retreat of the English ambassador, as if he saw a large sum of gold coins leaving his pocket. Feeling inexplicably heartbroken, as an important minister of the kingdom, he understands the mind of His Majesty the King, upholds Catholicism, and becomes a defender of the faith, which is the highest thought in the king's heart, and interests are irrelevant. Therefore, he could only watch the fortune leave without being able to speak. The same is true for the Duke of Avar on the side. Although he is against the Minister of Finance, he still understands what the huge Eastern trade will bring to the kingdom. Hampshire, a county in southeastern England, borders the Solent to the south, Surrey and West Sussex to the east, and the Solent to the Isle of Wight. The largest city, Southampton, is the capital of Hampshire and a famous port in England. The tax on ships docked every day brings a lot of income to the city hall, making other cities in the county extremely eye-catching. Before entering the city gate, according to the usual practice, there was a long queue, and slowly entered Southampton. Everyone felt that they were maintaining order, and everything was so harmonious. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, a sound of horseshoes disturbed the harmony. A group of people with short swords and blood-red cloaks rippling behind them rode straight past, ignoring the gatekeeper. The people in front of the city gate were not at all annoyed by being cut in line, but instead started discussing with great interest. Depending on the situation, someone else is unlucky again. I don't know which high-ranking official it is. Yes, There's a good show to watch, which is much more interesting than watching that play. People looked at the back of the knight galloping away with great interest. Sure enough, the group of knights lived up to expectations, rode their horses, and rushed directly to the sheriff's mansion. The Star Chamber Court handles the case. Please cooperate. Just when the guards in front of the government were about to intercept, the leader of this group of blood-red cloak knights directly showed an iron plate with the English word Star Chamber Court written on it. The Palace Intelligence Department is under the banner of the Star Chamber Court, so all will have the power to enforce the law. Yes, please come in. The guard looked at the sign. His thighs trembled, and he said tremblingly, and made a gesture of please under the shocking eyes of the guards. These members of the Palace Intelligence Department walked directly into the county chief's office in less than a minute. The majestic sheriff was now like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered, with his head downcast, like a mourning concubine, and his face was gray then. The chairman of the Traffic Management Committee was also arrested and escorted out together with the county chief. At this time, the entire sheriff's mansion was like an earthquake, flustered and full of discussions. But at this moment, news came that His Excellency the Supervisor, one of the three giants in Hampshire, was directly handed over to the county court by Bloodblade. In other words, the county chief, the supervisor, and the county lieutenant, except for the county lieutenant who controls the military power, were all arrested. And what followed were batches of accountants who carried out rigorous calculations and audits of every expenditure in the entire county government. Chapter 484. I am not a nobleman. With the actions of the intelligence agencies, especially the Palace Intelligence Service, which focuses on domestic execution, Hampshire was suddenly in a mess headed by the Sheriff of Hampshire and the Supervisor, plus some involved officials and businessmen. A total of more than 100 people were sent to Ireland. Fortunately, with the official admission examinations going on for many years, the number of officials in England is almost saturated. The resignation of a large number of officials in Hampshire has excited the middle-level officials. England has not had a county-level official who has been taken down for a long time. In this way, it is unknown how many official positions will be vacated. Therefore, the next day, the cabinet drafted a list of people to serve in Hampshire. The loss of a large number of officials did not bring any turmoil to Hampshire. As soon as the Hampshire incident happened, it once again proved the royal power's control over the United Kingdom, and His Majesty the King's prestige in the officialdom became more and more prominent. The central government took a tacit attitude towards His Majesty's actions, and then took advantage of this opportunity to strengthen the power of the central government. Those who were appointed and dismissed were more obedient. Finally, in the past few years since the cabinet was established, it has used its own advantages step by step to slowly plunder local rights and continuously improve the prestige of the central government. It can be said that in view of the principle that the butt determines the head, cabinet ministers naturally began to strengthen the power of the central government and deprive local powers. This is a natural law, and His Majesty the King is also happy to see this. At this time in Europe, centralization is the general trend. In order to solve the situation of official saturation, His Majesty the King turned his attention to France. In the early spring of March, on the dry ground outside Rouen City, some weeds had grown on the ground that was covered with corpses, showing a little bit of green. No one would have imagined that half a year ago, the ground was still covered with corpses and blood flowed like rivers in the wheat field outside the city. Due to the truce in Rouen, the winter wheat sown in autumn seems to be growing well after being fertilized by human beings, and it has already revealed an attractive green color. If nothing else, it will be a bumper harvest year. In a village 20 miles outside of Rouen, there are about 20 households, with smoke rising from the kitchen, dogs barking, cocks crowing, and green farm vegetables behind the house. It is a scene of happy farming. However, a half-brick house located in the center of the village is the only brick house in the village, and it is also the most spacious and bright big house. This is the meeting hall of the village, an important place where the village chief convenes all the villagers to discuss major issues, and it is also the barn where the wheat is harvested in the village. It can be said that this is the most important place in the village today. The village chief Moss has a bitter face, and the wrinkles on his face seem to have become a blooming chrysanthemum, revealing a lot of troubles beside him. An old man with a gray beard is the oldest old man in the village, very prestigious. Sitting on the other side was a man in his 30s with a strong figure and thick arms. The most conspicuous thing was that his left sleeve was empty. He was a mercenary who once wandered outside. He came back after losing his arm. He has always been the object of the young people in the village, and he is also the most powerful fighting force in the village. Originally we thought that the war was over and life would be peaceful again. Who knew that the rebel army had wiped out all the stock, causing our granary to bottom out? How will we live in the next few months? Village head Moss glanced at the few sacks of wheat beside him and sighed. Moss, we have to find a way. In a few months, we will get through it. At worst, a few people will starve to death. Hearing this, the gray-bearded old man looked down upon him a little. He still stared and said loudly, Moss, we can't give up. Peavy, who had a broken arm, quickly echoed, waved his strong right arm, and said forcefully, otherwise, I will take the young people in the village to go hunting together. Anyway, those nobles the lords can't control us anymore. The English can say, allow us to enter the forest to hunt and supplement food. Due to the long-term war, the agricultural losses were heavy, and the farmers had no food in their hands. In order to stabilize the rule and gather the population, the new governor of Normandy issued a decree allowing farmers to freely go out and hunt in the forest before the wheat harvest. No, who knows how long England can occupy? I heard the old man in the village say that the English ran away after only a few months of occupation. They all turned white with anger. It's not like you don't know the means of the nobleman. If we do this, it will be a disaster for the whole village. The old man sighed and closed his eyes, as if recalling the cruel methods of the nobles. His face trembled uncontrollably. In this way, the topic ended here, and the three people sitting there were suddenly helpless, worrying about the survival of the entire village. At this time, a villager suddenly said that several gentlemen from the city of Rouen had come. The village chief Moss looked puzzled and walked out of the village to welcome these masters from Rouen. When I came to the village, I saw a middle-aged man with a sharp beard and a sharp face. He was the little official in charge of taxation in Rouen, Florent. Every year when the wheat was harvested, he led his men to go from village to house. The tax collection is extremely annoying at this time. He was flattering an Englishman with a smile on his face, bent over, and there was an indescribable respect on his face. Respected Lord Florent, and several respected adults, I am the village chief Moss, may I help you? Moss couldn't figure out the situation, so he could only bow his head respectfully and walk to the old acquaintance. In front of him, he asked softly. Florent, who used to be a tax officer, looked at a young man beside him apologetically, and then said proudly, Moss, let me tell you, this is Lord Thomas Beaufort of Rouen. From now on, dozens of nearby villages, including yours, are under the control of this lord. You must obey his orders. Exclamation mark. Yes, my lord, this is what it should be. Moss was a little terrified when he heard this, and he quickly saluted the Englishman respectfully. Don't say that, I'm just an inconspicuous official of the king and the governor, and I was just entrusted to manage this new land that joined the kingdom. When Moss heard this, he dared to look up and take a serious look. The young man who spoke was only about 25 or 6 years old, with dark blue eyes, a straight nose, long black hair, and decent clothes. He looked like a nobleman. My lord. Excuse me, what is your family? Moss asked. Why are you asking this? The young man looked at the village chief, who answered decently in front of him, and couldn't help being a little surprised after hearing this. Knowing your family is the only way to promote your rule to the villagers, so that they know that we are your subjects. It doesn't need to be like this. I'm just an official, representing His Majesty the King to govern you. I'm not a nobleman. Chapter 485. The French are really rich. My lord, aren't you a noble? Our village will be your fief from now on. When the village chief Moss heard this sentence, he was inexplicably surprised, and quickly blurted it out, asking in a low voice, without respect and etiquette. As soon as the words came out of his mouth, Moss regretted it endlessly. He was just a humble farmer, so what right did he have to ask the adults? As a result, Thomas Beaufort saw it and asked the villagers, and immediately knelt down with a look of remorse. My lord, please forgive my rudeness. A trembling voice sounded. Only then did Thomas realize that the French aristocrats were so powerful that they could scare ordinary people to their knees. However, the nobles of England can only be respected and envied by ordinary people, but cannot be feared because commoners don't need to rely on their blood to obtain rights. Knowledge becomes another thing comparable to their blood, and nobles are no longer out of reach. Next, Thomas explained in detail the United Kingdom's governance of the Normandy region. For example, dozens of surrounding villages were merged into towns, under the leadership of the mayor, and then more than a dozen towns were merged into counties, under the leadership of His Excellency the Governor of Normandy. Moreover, all nobles, like England, will lose their governance, judicial, and taxation rights over the people, just like England. In this way, after explaining in detail for more than half an hour, Thomas finally narrated most of the things which surprised his future subordinate. He just looked at the village chief in a daze and surprise, with a smile on his face. The reason why Thomas has such a good temper and patience is because, in the next time, in order to successfully carry out the decree of His Excellency the Governor, He must win over these local snakes, otherwise he will definitely become a puppet after a while. When the former tax collector Florent, who was watching the play, got a little impatient, the village chief must finally realized it. Of course, obeying the leadership of the adults is what I should do. Moss nodded immediately, showing his loyalty. Feng Shuang's face was full of excitement. As long as you order, my lord, we will definitely listen to you. Whoever refuses to listen, I will break his leg. Very well, Village Chief Moss, I am very satisfied with your loyalty. Mayor Thomas had a gratified smile on his young face, as if he was very satisfied with his performance. I'm here this time because I have something to trouble you. I hope you will cooperate a lot. Thomas said, patting Village Chief Moss on the shoulder. Of course. This is what it should be. Moss suddenly revealed a smile that was not a smile, and agreed with a bit of crying. Okay, you lead the way ahead, let me go in and have a look. Mayor Thomas said with great interest. The smile on Moss' face became even more forced, and his walking posture was a little trembling. What can a small village do to entertain the mayor in this famine year? As Thomas walked, he described his plans, and Moss' face changed randomly like a chameleon when he heard that the newly established town of Snevo was about to be established here. His face turned pale, and when the young mayor said he became the deputy mayor, he became rosy again. Then, a series of decrees came out of the mouth of the young mayor suddenly, making the face of the village chief Moss change. The villagers are required to conduct military training every winter, all households are registered as households, and all villagers are registered. The passage of livres and francs in the Normandy area is prohibited within half a year, and villagers are allowed to exchange at any time. Only the British pound is allowed. After this series of policies came out, although Moss didn't know the effect, there was a word in his heart. The English were serious about the rule of Normandy. After inspecting the poor village, the young mayor sighed. It seems that if a new town center is to be established, it will cost a lot of money. Moss, I just saw that there are not many stocks in the village. Yes, my lord, last year's harvest was not good, and this year we are still short of food for several months. Moss said with an ugly face. In this case, the villagers can go to the Bank of England in Rouen to borrow grain. The interest will be waived for the first year, and they will be repaid on time in the next year. Thomas said casually when he remembered the orders of the governor and the rewards given to him by the Bank of England. My lord, is this true? Moss said in surprise. Of course, the Bank of England belongs to the royal family. It is the most trustworthy and the service is good. In the future, your salary will also be drawn from the Bank of England. What? I still have a salary? Of course, there is a reward for serving His Majesty the King. Thomas said as it should. Rouen, Normandy, inside the newly established palace of the Governor-General. Since the situation in France had temporarily maintained a dangerous balance, the English had seized the other half of Rouen from Count Gabriel, and all of Normandy had been brought under the rule of the United Kingdom. The first thing the newly established governor's mansion did was to divide the land of the Catholic nobles and the church into three, 40% for the king, and 3 levels for the military and the government. Then, according to the original arrangement, the bondholders were allowed to buy the land at half the price, so that the government's finances became rich immediately. Your Excellency, at present, according to the arrangement of the cabinet, the Normandy region is divided into 18 counties and several towns, and using talents from the Calais and Brisne regions, as well as talents sent from the United Kingdom, plus local defected nobles and families, a total of 460 people. After another month of training, they have been dispatched to Normandy all over. Integration is currently in progress. In the governor's office, Adam Carroll, the former governor of Calais and Baron Belloni, read a document seriously with a thick and magnetic voice. He was appointed and dismissed by His Majesty the King as the vice-governor to assist His Excellency in governing the Normandy region. His Excellency the Governor, on the other hand, had a straight face, and there was no trace of a smile on his unusually handsome face, but when viewed from the side, there was a different kind of beauty. What a charming man! Baron Belloni sighed inwardly, swallowed his saliva, and ended the report. In view of the differences in the Normandy region, the new governor is Alexander Cavaliers, and the military and government are in charge. Moreover, in recognition of his meritorious service, His Majesty the King has canonized him as the Baron of Rouen, with a manor of tens of thousands of acres. The Marquis of Edinburgh, who captured Brittany, only added a baronial title and thousands of acres of land. Your Excellency the Baron, please try your best to urge the Bank of England to open a branch. Agriculture in Normandy was damaged a lot last year, and I'm afraid it will cause riots. His Excellency the Governor looked at Baron Belloni with his beautiful eyes, and ordered seriously. Yes, Your Excellency. Such a beautiful face made Baron Belloni a little distracted for a moment. and it took him a while to react. The finances are relatively rich at the moment. Don't be too tight about the appropriations of the town and county governments. Moreover, please allocate £5,000 as a reward for the expeditionary force to boost morale. As the actual leader in handling civil affairs, Baron Belloni agreed to His Excellency Governor's opinion after thinking for a moment. Thanks to the income from the sale of land, the government's finances have reached a terrifying £100,000. This shows how rich the French church and nobles are. The French are so rich. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 486 Pirates. With the advent of 1564, the rule of the United Kingdom over Normandy and Brittany began to be formally established, relying on a strong army. These two regions have also begun slow and seemingly hasty surgical reforms, of course. Although the Catholic nobles were expelled and the religious properties were confiscated, they still could not change the control of the nobles over the two places. As for the seizure of power by the nobles, of course the nobles will not let it go. There are undercurrents surging, and riots are brewing. The French Catholic allies and the Huguenots are building up their strength for a new round of civil war in Spain. The Duke of Avar led a 20,000-strong army and was quickly marching towards the Netherlands, preparing to extinguish the uprising in the Netherlands. As for the Portuguese, they still monopolized the trade in the East, happily watching the European continent in chaos, secretly making a fortune on the sea. A large two-masted ship rides the wind and waves, moving forward slowly. Even though the sea wind is strong and the sails are bulging, it is still moving hard, cumbersome and slow. The beating of the wave seems to have no effect on it. The sailors on the ship are still standing steadily, drinking wine, singing songs, chatting dirty jokes, and a happy atmosphere. Hey, Scar, why are you drinking again? On the deck, there was a handsome sailor, well-dressed and clean. Compared to other sailors, he was simply a nobleman. He went straight to the side of the man who was sitting on the ground, drinking non-stop with a drink in his hand, and asked in a bad tone, I haven't arrived in Portugal yet. What if I encounter pirates? The man sitting on the deck has short hair, but there is a scar directly from the corner of his mouth to the middle of his head, like a centipede, which makes people shudder. If it was a little deeper, I'm afraid my head would have burst. Oh, my first mate, isn't it almost Lisbon? What's the danger? What can happen if you drink a little wine? Scar looked up at the sailor with the front teeth, then lowered his head again, took a sip of his wine, and said rascally, besides, our navy is not a vegetarian. Any robber who dares to rob us is purely courting death. The man with the scar changed his posture, half lying on the deck, drinking wine, basking in the sun, and said lazily, yes. First officer, we have been at sea for more than a month, and we finally took a break. What can happen? According to the sailing agreement, it doesn't say that drinking is not allowed. What are you afraid of? The pirates are coming. We took the opportunity to rob them. The cannons on the ship are not vegetarian. Scar seemed to be very influential among the sailors. As soon as he finished speaking, the other sailors immediately spoke up and supported him, which directly made the handsome first officer blush. Okay, if something happens next, you guys will be watching. He glanced at the man with the scar, then at the dozen or so other sailors who responded, and then left with a few words helplessly, ha ha ha. With the departure of the chief mate, the deck immediately became a sea of joy, and the atmosphere became more enthusiastic. Your Excellency, Captain. That guy with scar is slacking off again. The first mate came to the captain's cabin in a panic, and complained to the captain, who was enjoying the wine in an upright manner. Don't worry about them, Kadir, you are different from them. They are just a pile of mud on the ground, and you are the king's palace. There is no comparison. The captain drank wine leisurely, squinted his eyes, with two red clouds on his face, looked at the handsome first officer and said, you have been to school and can read some words, although not many, but you are very different from them. At best they become a filthy sailor, all their lives, and you are destined to be a captain. You are so clever, so gifted, the captain is where you belong. As he spoke, the captain took another sip of wine and said with a blurred look, your father is a captain, and he also has shares in the company, so it's a matter of course to become a captain. Kadir looked at the drunken master captain, lifted him to the bed, looked at his fat body out of breath, and shook his head. During this trip to sea, I bought a large amount of spices, silk, and ivory from Goa, and also stopped at an African coast. I exchanged some bows and arrows and iron swords for 50 pounds of gold. It can be said that their trip to the east was a bumper harvest. Therefore, when the ship approached Portugal, everyone on board couldn't wait to start celebrating. After the ship docked in Lisbon, each person could get at least 10 gold coins, plus their own booty, enough for them to live in style for a few years. But Kadir is different. Just as the captain said, his father is a shareholder of the company, and this trip to sea is not for money, but to investigate the eastern route. After all, the company in the Netherlands is the real business of his family. This trip to sea opened his eyes. He is almost certain that investing in the eastern route will definitely increase the profits and the family power will expand several times. Your Excellency, Captain. Kadir heard the sound of the horn, and his face couldn't help but change. But at this time, a sailor hurried over, shouting, "What's wrong?" Kadir asked in a deep voice. "There are pirates, pirates," cried the sailor. Seeing this, Kadir immediately ran out of the cabin and looked around. His face suddenly paled. Behind their ship, 3 Galen ships with pirate flags were rushing towards them, only 2 miles away from them, and the distance was getting closer and closer. The pirate ships formed a triangular formation, quickly approaching them with a menacing aura. And what about them? Due to the full load of cargo, the entire ship is slow. No matter how fast it runs, it will be caught up in less than 10 minutes. Quick, everyone get ready, speed up. Speed up with all your strength. Gunners are ready, shelling when the distance is up. Archers prepare to. For a while, Kadir hurriedly ordered to get ready to counterattack the pirates. Sure enough, in less than 10 minutes, a pirate ship chased after it, and dozens of cannons fired shells, shaking the merchant ship returning with a full load. However, the merchant ship's counterattack was scattered among the 3 ships, and the firepower was scattered, which was tantamount to tickling them. The persecuted pirates made all the sailors panic, and the scene of mortal death made them terrified. While Kadir looked at the surrounded merchant ships and the black cannons, he could even see the ferocious faces of the pirates. Their big red faces. "Damn scar, damn sailor." Kadir cursed. "Kadir, what's going on?" The captain staggered out of the cabin, looked at the pirate ship. His face turned pale and bloodless. Kadir glanced back at him and sighed. "In such a situation, you can only let it go. Surrender. Raise the white flag, we surrender." Chapter 487 Special Symbols. Since the beginning of the Age of Great Voyages, in the past few decades, the prosperity of maritime trade has not only allowed nobles and merchants to go to sea and make a fortune, but also those pirates have also risen up, like mushrooms after rain, covering the whole world ocean. And those ocean-going merchant ships are their spring rain and the nutrients for their growth. Of course, in this era of chaos, pirates and merchant ships cannot be completely distinguished. A pirate flag on a tree will turn a harmless merchant ship into a vicious pirate. Between wealth and life, Kadir quickly made a choice. "Put up the white flag, you idiots." Kadir didn't care about the captain's shout, but used his authority to give orders. Soon, seeing the hopelessness of resistance, the sailors surrendered one after another, without any intention of working for their employers. The captain glanced at the 3 pirate ships surrounding him. Although they were not as big as his 800-ton Galen ship, their combat power was not at the same level. "Surrender, we surrender, my lords, we surrender." The captain raised his hands wisely and shouted loudly at the pirates who could vaguely see their faces. "Boss, this is a fat sheep. No, this ship is bulging and slow. Although it is not as good as that gold transport ship, it may not be much less. Haha. I'm so lucky today, I'm going to make a fortune." Seeing the surrender of the merchant ship, the pirates surrounded on all sides boarded the merchant ship one by one, looked left and right. Their ugly faces were filled with unstoppable smiles. Kadir watched the pirates jumping on his ship with all kinds of weapons, chatting and laughing. Their originally ferocious faces looked extraordinarily arrogant. Obviously they were very satisfied with his ship. He smiled wryly in his heart. Who would have thought that he would be robbed when he went out to sea for the first time and was almost at the door of his house? What a disaster. Whether his life can be saved is another matter. But after a while, no fewer than 400 pirates landed on the merchant ship, and the total number of sailors was less than 200. Surrender seemed to be the right choice, and Kadir, who has been observing the pirates, suddenly discovered a big secret. These pirates boarded the ship in an orderly manner. Even though their faces were excited, they still did not loot the gold and silver. Instead, they watched and escorted them one by one. The sailor seemed to be waiting for something. Finally, a well-dressed pirate who looked like an aristocrat came over, but his nondescript footsteps and out of the ordinary movements betrayed him. He had 2 bushy beards, a captain's hat on his head, and what seemed to be a green agate ring in his hand. He looked like an aristocrat. "Very good, brothers, today is a day of great harvest for us." Next, I will not hesitate to reward, everyone will be rewarded heavily, like a natural leader, he issued a summary. Although the traces of imitating the nobility are very strong, he still achieved good results. Thank you, head boss. You are the most generous boss I have ever seen. Long live the captain, long live the wine, long live God. For a moment, the pirates, who were originally full of interest, blushed, danced and danced, as if they were taking hormones again, and their eyeballs almost popped out. Generally speaking, pirates do not have a basic salary, and only when they rob merchant ships will they have income. 30% is for the captain, 20% for navigators, first mates, doctors and other functional sailors, and 10% for hard-working sailors. 3, 2, 1. This is an ordinary money-sharing model. Of course, there are also strong captains who occupy half of the money, thus accumulating a lot of wealth. The pirate leader wore a mask on his face, in the shape of a skull, giving people a sense of fear. After he finished speaking, he ordered some pirates to search the merchant ship, and he walked up to the trembling captain step by step, and asked, "You are from the east?" "Yes, yes." The captain kept nodding in fear, and said palely, "We have gold, spices, and ivory on board. These are all for you. Please let us go." "Haha. I can't afford to be called an adult, I'm just a hard-working person seeking money." The pirate leader glanced at the cowardly captain, then at the strong sailors with more than 100 bound hands and feet, raised his head and smiled, then patted him on the shoulder and said, "Since you have surrendered so wisely, for the sake of God, I am happy today, so I will let you die." After receiving these words, the captain relaxed, as if he was relieved from a heavy load, and then he collapsed on the deck, with a stream of yellow water flowing from his crotch, and his face suddenly became happy. "That's good, that's good. Thank you, my lord, thank you, my lord, the Portuguese are so virtuous." "Ho ha ho ha." The masked pirate leader looked at the pirates around him and laughed presumptuously in English. "Boss, what did you just say? You're babbling, Portuguese is so ugly." A pirate wearing a one-eyed patch, with his upper body exposed, asked carelessly. "It's nothing, I'm just going to let them go for the sake of their knowledge." The pirate leader explained to the pirates who had the same question, "Wait a minute, throw a few boards down, throw a few more. I told them to let them go." "Yes, boss, I will definitely throw a few more dollars, and I promise not to disappoint them. We pirates have a guarantee." Immediately, a pirate took the conversation, patted his chest, and said validly. For a moment, all the pirates on the entire merchant ship laughed happily. Kadir, on the other hand, watched the conversation of the pirates with cold eyes. Although he could not understand, he became interested in the weapons on their bodies. These people have a lot of matchlock guns on their bodies. I'm afraid they have a strong background. Kadir counted and found that the pirates had hundreds of matchlock guns. This is not a small number. Ordinary dukes in Europe may not be able to own so many matchlock guns. Guys, hurry up. It's not far from Portugal. Who knows when the damn Portuguese navy will arrive? I don't want to try the Portuguese artillery, the pirate leader urged. Soon, in less than half an hour, the ship's goods were counted, and most of the goods were moved to the other 3 pirate ships to share the pressure. The flags on the merchant ships were also changed to French styles. The merchant ship, together with 3 pirate ships, left the sea before the arrival of the Portuguese navy. On the sea, more than 100 sailors were hanging on a dozen or so floating wooden boards, shouting helplessly. But it was already close to Portugal, and countless merchant ships passed by. They were rescued in less than an hour. It seems that the pirates are still keeping their word. The 3 pirate ships, together with the newly captured merchant ships, headed towards England at an extremely fast speed. At sea, the patrolling Royal Navy stopped attacking the pirate ships after seeing a red rose on the flag of the pirate ship. "Brother, why did the captain not allow us to fight those pirates?" a novice sailor asked the veteran with the vicissitudes of life. "Hey, you don't understand this." The veteran patted the recruit's head and said with a smile, "See the red roses on their flags? These are their life-saving charms. We can't beat them." Why do children ask so many questions? Work hard." The old soldier cast a glance at him and said angrily, then wiped the deck. Chapter 488. The Provocation of the English. 3 pirate ships and a merchant ship sailed recklessly in the sea. Waves were broken, and seagulls flew in the sky on the deep blue sea. Merchant ships coming and going are densely driving. Merchant ships of different tonnages and colors are moving slowly, telling the gift of the sea to them, "Slow down a bit, the Portuguese can't catch up anymore." The masked pirate leader standing on the deck casually said, "Yes, boss." The pirate at the side agreed tactfully. Looking at the port slowly emerging in front of him, Drake took off his mask, and his long brown hair spread out, revealing a pair of black and white eyes with slender eyebrows and a short beard on his chin. His complexion looks soft, like a harmless boy next door, which makes people feel good about him unconsciously. The young man's name is Francis Drake, and he has been a well-known pirate in the entire sea area for the past 3 years. He has as many as 3 pirate ships under his command. Just when Drake was staring at the port in front of him, his lips moved slightly, and he didn't know what he was muttering at this time. A man with a musket on his back suddenly walked beside him, with an unshaven beard, like Drake, staring at the gradually clear port, and sighed. "Francis, after finishing this vote, next, you any plans? What else can I do? Keep going. I want to be the biggest pirate in England. The king of pirates." Drake looked at the undulating sea. Blood suddenly appeared on his face. He opened his hands, and said excitedly, "And what about you, my dear captain?" Drake asked, looking at his captain. "What about me? I'm ready to go home." The captain said with a bitter smile on his face, "You also know that there are several sons in my hometown, and a wife who keeps arguing. When I came out with you, it was to make money to support the family." The wrinkles on his face suddenly stretched out at this moment, like a blooming chrysanthemum, showing some warmth. "Unconsciously in the past 3 years, I have also saved some money. I plan to go home and buy dozens of acres of land, and then send my son to study. If there is an official in the future, it will be God's blessing." Seeing his captain's expression of anticipation and longing, Drake persuaded him with some distaste. "Barton, you can stay with me for a while. I don't trust many people, and you are one of them. No, you know, Drake, my wife is still waiting for me to go back. Besides, pirates are still too dangerous." Captain Barton shook his head and refused. "Do you want to go back with only money? Go back as a pirate and tell your son, 'Hey, I paid you to study with the money of being a pirate. What else do you have? Dignity? What will your neighbors think of you?'" Drake looked at his capable captain, and still persuaded him persistently. "An experienced captain is very important to pirates' dignity. They are all pirates. How can they have dignity like nobles? How do you know that we won't become nobles?" Drake said proudly with a smile on his face. "Look, what is this?" As he spoke, Drake took out a parchment full of English and handed it to Captain Barton. Captain Barton's eyes were fixed immediately. He took the parchment, and looked at it carefully. "To all the people, all citizens of the United Kingdom, as long as they have the courage and perseverance to face the great king, will be able to meet the great king, personally receive the letter of commission, go to the wild lands that are not affiliated with any Christian country, occupy and expel the place of the heathen, whether it is an island or a town. As long as it is an occupied pagan territory, it will be recognized by His Majesty the King, and will be given a knighthood as appropriate, if you fail to occupy it. But discover the unknown territory for my king, you will also receive rewards and title rewards." Captain Barton glanced at the parchment, then at Drake, who looked expectant, and asked in surprise, "You want to go to the New World?" "No, I want to find unknown regions. The New World has been discovered by the Spaniards, and I don't have the heart to build any colonies. The sea is my life." Drake shook his head, opened a pair of black and white eyes, and said, "Barton, only by looking for unknown and undiscovered lands for His Majesty can we get the most benefits. Sir? Baron, or Earl, it's all possible. Baron or something, let's forget it. I'm already satisfied to get a knight." Some expectations suddenly appeared in Barton's eyes, and then dimmed. "And the unknown land, how can it be so easy to find? If you don't try, how do you know it's impossible?" Drake said with a half smile, and then cast his eyes on the sea ahead. And Barton looked at the confident Drake, and for some reason, he suddenly had some words from the young pirate leader. At the beginning of 1564, His Majesty the King issued only 3 privateer warrants in January, and by June there were 30 in half a year. His Majesty the King issued nearly 100 privateer licenses at once, that is to say, pirates with legitimate robberies. It has reached 100, and the combined number has reached more than 10,000 during this period. The Portuguese were the first to be impacted. A large number of Eastern trading ships were robbed by pirates, causing heavy losses to Portuguese merchants. What makes the Portuguese government displeased is that after the gold ship in America was robbed, the Portuguese government and royal family, which spent a lot of money, panicked. After half a year, the loss of the royal family alone reached 500,000 ducat, which made it unbearable for the upstart Portuguese royal family. "Enrique, what's the matter with the English?" Queen Dowager Catherine, who is also the grandmother of the current King Sebastian I of Portugal, frowned at this time, and asked about Enrique, who is also the ruling archbishop, and read, "Dear Queen, I don't know the specific situation, But I sent someone to question the King of England, but he said that this is an act of pirates and has nothing to do with England. Archbishop Enrique, the 52-year-old regent and uncle of the current king, also frowned and said softly, it's full of lies. Without the cover of the English, those pirates would have been wiped out by the navy long ago. How could they be rampant? The wrinkled Queen Mother was full of anger, then looked at her brother-in-law, and said loudly, this is an act of provocation against us, Portugal. We must retaliate with an eye for an eye. Chapter 489. No, Your Majesty the Queen Mother. Archbishop Regent Enrique twitched his eyebrows, stretched out his withered right hand from his large robe, and stopped him softly. The English people may have other plans for such behavior. The Queen Mother turned her eyes and her face was a little dignified. You mean that the English are plotting against us, Portugal? Yes. Nodding, Archbishop Enrique continued, a while ago, I heard that the English went to meet Philip II and asked to persecute our country together and share the eastern trade, but Philip II did not agree because of the checks and balances of the agreement. At that time, the ambassador of England left with a smile on his face. Now it seems that they have long been dissatisfied with us. His Excellency the Archbishop sighed and said, aren't the English afraid of our navy? Asked the Queen Mother hastily. Alice. According to the information I have received, the number of warships owned by the English is almost the same as ours. If there is a fight, the Spaniards must be the ones who will benefit in the end. As the regent of Portugal, Archbishop Enrique naturally knew a lot, and he explained politics to Her Majesty the Queen Mother. The Spaniards have always been coveting our trade. The English are just testing it out. I don't think it will be long before the English will start a war with us. How can it be? There can be no more wars. Queen Catherine immediately shook her head and refused. Current Portugal cannot afford any war. Today's Portuguese Empire has vast colonies in Asia, Africa and Latin America, as well as a large number of trading posts, such as Macau and China. But in fact, Portugal's population is only 2 million, and it does not have a large population to maintain this huge empire. Most of the current overseas colonies are maintained by mercenaries, let alone a war, of course. If the population is not large, you can spend money to hire them. But what is surprising is that Portugal has no money in the treasury to write about this huge colonial empire. The profits from Eastern trade and the gold and silver from America directly caused inflation, and the farmers went bankrupt. The gold and silver obtained were either squandered by the nobles, or flowed into England, France and the Netherlands. For example, every year Portugal imports a large amount of raw meat, timber, and furs from England, cloth from the Netherlands, and grain from France. In the mid-16th century, the Portuguese Empire had declined. Let's make peace. We agreed to allow England to dock at our commercial station for supplies and repairs under certain conditions. Her Majesty the Queen Mother thought about the current Portuguese treasury, recalled the lazy soldiers, and said helplessly, these are things that will happen sooner or later, it's just that they arrived early. The Empress Dowager seemed unable to bear the fact that the Portuguese Empire was in decline. She wiped her eyes with thick foundation, said something impolite in a low voice, and left quickly. Watching the Queen Mother leave, Archbishop Enrique looked up at her back, blinked his turbid eyes, sighed, and staggered away. Mediocre leaders, extravagant nobility, bankrupt agriculture, and numerous competitors all contributed to the decline of the Portuguese Empire. His Majesty Edward VI was only slightly surprised when the Portuguese ambassador came to convey the news that the English were allowed to use the Portuguese trading post reasonably and to share the route. And then he negotiated with the Portuguese ambassador as if nothing had happened. Your Majesty, the Portuguese have really surrendered. Prime Minister William Celsey sighed as he looked at the lonely Portuguese ambassador. Of course, Portugal, a huge empire, is currently nothing more than a strong foreign power. With a light poke, it will reveal its original form. Edward smiled and said softly, as if he didn't pay much attention to Portugal, a colonial empire of tens of millions of square kilometers. In fact, as early as a few decades ago, Portugal had to give up the 4 strongholds of Safi, Azmir, Alcazar Segar and Alzira in North Africa, leaving only Ceuta in Morocco and Tangier. Moreover, during the period of the former King João II, Portugal implemented a policy of complete isolation or close to isolation. He would rather endure insults than go to war, and would not form alliances with other European powers. Portugal seems to devote himself to trade, irresistible at this time. Portugal can only scare countries that are weaker than it. For England of the same level, in Edward's eyes, these are just showy and not worth mentioning. Of course, our Prime Minister William was limited in his vision and did not see the slowly declining national power of Portugal. Naturally, he made a fuss about the Portuguese's submission. Your Majesty, In this way, it can be expected that next year's finances will definitely increase more. The Prime Minister looked at His Majesty the King and said respectfully, yes. The kingdom's trade with the East will definitely make great progress. His Majesty the King sighed, these are all thanks to your Majesty. The issuance of the privateer license not only allowed you to harvest a large amount of wealth and control the huge pirates, but also open up the kingdom's eastern trade. Portugal's monopoly on eastern trade lies not only in their monopoly on navigation routes, but also in their occupation of most of the strongholds along the African coast, which are the main support points for eastern trade. Cooperating with the Portuguese is tantamount to sharing the mature routes developed by the Portuguese over the past century, saving the British a lot of manpower and financial resources in one fell swoop. At least a dozen years of effort. The English made a fortune since the agreement has been signed. Let those pirates deal with the Portuguese softly, and the Spaniards will become very rich. Ah, yes. The Prime Minister immediately showed a look of disbelief. After receiving the affirmative gaze from His Majesty the King, he slowed down and quickly responded, the relationship between Britain and Spain is about to break up? What is His Majesty the King thinking? Unable to restrain the thoughts in his heart, His Excellency the Prime Minister retired softly and left the office. Seeing the Prime Minister, whose footsteps were a bit messy, Edward put away his smile and thought, I'm going to fight the Portuguese to see how powerful the navy is. Who would have thought that the Portuguese would surrender? For now, the only ones standing in front of England are the Spaniards. His Majesty the King frowned and thought detonating the Dutch Revolution in advance was just to consume Spain's national power, and then robbed Spain's treasure ships to make its financial situation even worse. But these are far from enough. Spain's Mediterranean fleet is still huge. It seems that only the Ceuta region of the Portuguese can be occupied. This matter is not so easy to solve. Chapter 490 Ceuta Port and Berbers. The Ceuta region, which is located in the northernmost part of the Maghreb, collectively referred to as the three countries of Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia, is the tentacles of Morocco. On the Mediterranean coast near the Strait of Gibraltar, it can be said that its geographical location is very important and can control the Mediterranean Sea to a certain extent. In fact, as early as 1415, it was occupied by Portugal and became a Portuguese colonial stronghold, and Ceuta is not the only important place that Morocco belongs to. In a sense, Cape Tangier is more valuable than Ceuta. Ceuta is in the interior of the Mediterranean Sea, Tangier is in the exterior, combined with Spain's Gibraltar. This is the real control of the Mediterranean Sea. Of course, Ceuta is small, and it is a long and narrow island stretching out. It has a large military role, but a small economic role. Tangier is one of the four major cities in Morocco, and it is also the starting point for business travel in the Sahara Desert in Africa, with huge economic benefits. So, this time, His Majesty the King put Ceuta as the target, not the richer Tangier. Hey, dude, need a refill? I've got the sweetest wine. A merchant ship had just docked in Ceuta. Alan wrapped himself in a woolen coat and stepped off the ship. Authentic Portuguese was heard in his ears selling their wares. No, okay, how much is a can? Alan just wanted to refuse, but when he remembered his plan to come here, he immediately nodded and agreed. Guest officer, come with me. My shop has everything you need to drink, at cheap prices. Berber, Spanish, French, everything is available at my place, and it is famous in the entire port of Ceuta. The Arab businessman grinned. Take a step forward, pull Alan and leave. That's called a quick one. Alan followed without hesitation, and behind him, without knowing when, two guards also followed him without a knife or a gun, following him every step of the way. Hey, Papa Muhammad kidnapped another businessman, and he is going to make a fortune. Yet, this is the third time this month. There are so many fools. Soon Alan was taken to run through a small street, dozens of small shops, people coming and going, a mixture of various races and languages, and it was extremely lively. It is estimated that it is the main trading street of the small Ceuta port. At the end, after a small shop full of bottles and cans, Alan could stop and rest for a while. Sir, it's right for you to come to us. Whether it's French, Spanish, or Berber wine, I have it, and even black special wine, which is very suitable for gifting. Only then did Alan take a closer look at the face of the Arab businessman, with a full unshaven beard, light blue eyes, a tall nose, and narrowed eyes, revealing a sly aura. Okay, bring me 10 cans of this black wine. Alan walked around the small shop, looked at a dark can with several exotic pictures engraved on it, and then opened it to taste. After tasting, he narrowed his eyes, pointed and said, Sir, you have good eyesight. This is the fruit wine brewed by the Zenata people of the Bani Maran tribe. It is sour and sweet, and it is unforgettable. The Arab businessman narrowed his eyes, glanced up and down, and said cheerfully, "Just 10 gold coins, and you can bring them back." "Yes." Alan tugged his lips and agreed reluctantly, but he cursed in his heart. The unscrupulous businessman. If it wasn't for other things, he would have left long ago. "Sir, do you need anything else? This is the best shop in Ceuta Port," the Arab businessman said, looking at Alan, who was hesitant. "Boss, I need to meet the Berbers nearby, and it's the leader." Alan glanced at him and said directly, "Sir, what are you talking about? How can I know Berbers?" The Arab businessman said calmly with a confused face. Wow. Alan didn't say anything, just took out his money bag and threw it on the table. All of a sudden, the golden coins in the purse leaked out without any accident, covering the small wooden table. The Arab businessman stared intently at the coins on the wooden table, his eyes almost protruding, and he was stunned, of course. The merchant's face changed suddenly, and he said with a smile while counting the money, "Although I don't drink alcohol, I know a lot of Berber people. These people graze and farm nearby. I often go to get some drinks. I know a tribal leader with hundreds of people. He just took over the position of the old leader last year." After receiving this news, Alan couldn't help but feel happy. Sure enough, the businessman is the most well-informed person, and the money was not wasted, and he found the target so quickly. "Then, when can you introduce me to meet him?" Alan said impatiently. Wow, another bag of gold coins was thrown over. "The day after tomorrow. The day after tomorrow, I'll take you there, and I'm going to buy a batch of wine too. I can bring him here so you can meet each other," the businessman said impatiently. On the third day, Alan came to the wine shop with 2 guards, and in front of the wine shop, there were indeed a few commoner men standing, with the same Western face, but bronze skin, slightly bow-legged, looking around. "Come on, let me introduce you, Mr. Allen. This is the leader of Ava Brown." I saw that the Arab businessman introduced a young man in his 20s with a rebellious face. "Hello, leader, you are the businessman who wants to send us money. Quickly bring the money, I am in a hurry to go back." The young man stretched out his hand and said impatiently. Alan glanced at the Arab businessman inexplicably, glared at him, and then smiled and said to the young leader, "That's right, I'm about to send you money, let's go in and talk." After Alan said a few words into the young man's ear, he entered the liquor store with a blank expression on his face. The Arab businessman was about to follow in, but was stopped by Alan's guards, and Alan's voice sounded, "Boss, borrow your shop and return it to you in a while." The Arab businessman watched the two enter his shop, but he could only jump. Feeling helpless. Half an hour later, Alan and the young leader of Ava Brown came out. Both of them had satisfied expressions on their faces, and it seemed that they were talking. "Well, leader, I'm waiting for your good news." Alan said goodbye with a smile to the Berber leader, who was riding back. "Of course, we Berbers always mean what we say." The young leader turned his head, replied arrogantly, and left without hesitation. The Arab businessman was left alone with a confused look on his face. The next day, Alan secretly unloaded some long knives and matchlock guns from the merchant ship, and then quickly left with the merchant ship. Chapter 491. The New Governor. Not long after the businessman Alan left Ceuta, there was a Berber riot in Ceuta. Hundreds of Berbers, holding muskets and bows, suddenly ransacked the Ceuta area. The Portuguese soldiers stationed at Mount Hazrel, the highest point in Ceuta, relying on the number of hundreds of people and several cannons, have been guarding against death, which did not cause Ceuta to break away from the control of the Portuguese. But the Berbers also attacked and just surrounded, leaving hundreds of Portuguese to sit and eat. As a result, in less than 2 days, the hundreds of Portuguese who had been relying on the port for a living and had not stored much food and grass raised their hands and surrendered. And the port of Ceuta also reached the hands of the Berbers. It's not that Portugal didn't think about taking back the port, but the Berbers lingered. As soon as they took back the port, they came to harass them. How can they do business like this in this way? Wouldn't the port of Ceuta be abolished? In the eyes of the Portuguese, who are all about money, the value is greatly reduced, especially in Tangier, which has another higher military and economic value, and the abandonment of the Ceuta region has been put on the agenda. After hearing the news, Archbishop Enrique, the regent of Portugal, felt a little bad. He didn't want to lose this port with great military value, but the Portuguese aristocrats were very powerful, and they were unwilling to operate such an area whose value had plummeted, and they needed to invest a lot of money. The pressure from the nobles made the regent Archbishop Enrique have to consider 3 points: losing a stronghold for no reason, how helpless it is for Portugal to suffer such a grievousness. In Morocco, Portugal has only Tangier and Ceuta, but Ceuta has fallen into the hands of the Berbers, which is really bad luck. My lord, please see the English ambassador. At the moment when the regent was having a headache, An attendant suddenly said softly, "Let him in." The archbishop said softly after thinking for a while, "My lord regent, please forgive me for taking the liberty to visit." The ambassador, with his swarthy beard and a gentlemanly appearance, looked pleasing to the eye. However, His Excellency the Archbishop, after being robbed by the English a while ago, was particularly uncomfortable with the English, especially the gentlemanly etiquette that looked beautiful. No matter how you looked at it, you felt disgusted. How come? The arrival of His Excellency the Ambassador makes me happy. The Archbishop suddenly laughed when he saw the ambassador. His tone was gentle and friendly. "What's the matter, Your Excellency the Ambassador?" After discussing some other topics, the Archbishop restrained his smile and asked softly, "It's like this. After your country's Ceuta port was illegally occupied by Berbers and those heretics, not only your country, but also our businessmen suffered heavy losses. Our Majesty Edward was very saddened by this, and decided to send troops to help your country get rid of those Berbers." Your Excellency the Ambassador looked at the serious face of the Archbishop with a kind smile on his face, as if England is a country that is eager to help others. "Words are infectious. We in Portugal understand the enthusiasm for your country, but the Berbers are not worth mentioning to us in Portugal." The Archbishop's face changed to be kind, and he immediately opposed it affirmatively and resolutely. The innocuous expression of the Englishman no longer worked for him, and he would never agree with England's kindness because he knows that under every piece of fat meat there is a trap that is regrettable. Seeing the Portuguese regent's anti-thief expression, His Excellency the Ambassador sighed. "In this case, I will take my leave first, and I hope you will not regret it." "Of course, I will never regret it." Soon, the news reached London. "Since the Portuguese don't eat fine wine when toasting, don't blame me for taking advantage." His Majesty Edward looked at the letter, showing a sinister smile, and said to himself, originally, he was going to help the Portuguese seize the port of Ceuta as a condition, and only wanted to share Ceuta with him, not to monopolize it, and who knew that the Portuguese didn't appreciate it, so don't blame England for being shameless. Next 3 days later, 3 armed English merchant ships docked at the half-abandoned Ceuta port, and then disembarked 500 well-equipped English soldiers. Unlike the decadent and disorganized Portuguese soldiers, this group of Englishmen was well-paced and disciplined. They did not have the spirit of fear of death of the Portuguese. Instead, they swept across the entire Ceuta region, killing many Berbers who were making trouble, and bringing peace to the entire Ceuta region. Moreover, under the leadership of the English, the Ceuta region has expanded a lot. The original small peninsula has directly occupied a large area of Morocco. It is conservatively estimated that the Ceuta region has expanded by more than 3 times. What everyone didn't pay attention to is that the Amaranga tribe united some tribes to occupy Ceuta, and then took over some tribes that were maimed by the English. In a blink of an eye, it became the largest tribe in the Ceuta area, with a population of 10,000 people at this time. The English who planted the flag of the United Kingdom on Mount Hadro did not feel the pressure. On the contrary, the Amoranci tribe, whose number of tribes has risen sharply, has faced tremendous pressure. The newly established Saud dynasty in Morocco officially set its sights on it and began to watch the rising Berber tribe. In 1553, the Saud dynasty overthrew the Marin dynasty, and Mohammed al-Hajj, officially called the Sultan, settled in Marrakesh, and established the Saud dynasty. Although this dynasty defeated the Portuguese, recovered coastal strongholds such as Agadir, Safi, and Esmer, and captured Fez in 1548, but the Spaniards still firmly occupy Melilla. It can be seen that the Portuguese are still too weak. Forget about the European colonists. Suddenly a new big tribe emerged in the mainland, and like the previous Marin dynasty, they were all Berbers. This made Abdullah-Gharib very angry, and the consequences were very serious. An army of 10,000 people has set off from the capital Marrakesh and is on its way to the Ceuta region, and the young and fearless leader of the Amaranga tribe, unable to control the fear in his heart, came to the port of Ceuta to ask the English for help. The Amaranga tribe is the Berbers, while the Saud dynasty is the Muslim. There is no room for relaxation between the two, and it is directly a battle of life and death. My lord, if you can help our Amaranga tribe get through the difficulties, we are willing to donate 10 camels' humps of gold. Amaranga looked at the English army officer in front of him solemnly, and said in proficient Portuguese, "Yes, but I need not only gold, but also land." The new governor of Ceuta said with a serious face, "This land is not enough for us to live on, we need more land for trade." The translator next to him was meticulously translating. Chapter 492, Treaty of Lisbon. As the 10,000-strong army of the Saud dynasty continued to approach, the Berbers finally chose to surrender. They decided that after paying the 10 peaks gold, if they won, they would cede the area near Ceuta to the English, and if it goes well, after this war, The area of Ceuta will soon reach 60 square kilometers, equivalent to 2 Macau regions, which will greatly expand the influence of the English in the Mediterranean. As the other party to the contract, the English need to provide 500 matchlock guns, 5 bronze cannons, and recruit 1,000 mercenaries for the Berbers. Of course, the wages are paid by the Berbers themselves. Although muskets and artillery cost a lot of money, England's munitions production has matured, and matchlock guns have begun to be phased out, and the prices have plummeted. His Majesty the King is ready to dump them all over Europe, so, excluding these expenses, England earned a total of nearly £10,000 in profit, which is really amazing. However, this also made the English understand one thing: Morocco has a lot of gold. With the help of the English, the Berbers quickly organized a joint army of 5,000 Berber tribes and a 1,000-strong German mercenary army, waiting for the Assad army. At this time, the Portuguese soon learned that the English had occupied their port of Ceuta, and the Portuguese ambassador personally met His Majesty the King. Your Majesty, your country has invaded our territory for no reason. Does this mean that your country is preparing to fight against me, Portugal? After the Portuguese ambassador saw the young king, he raised his sexy beard and said straight to the point with a heavy tone. He probably thought that Portugal was in the period of great empire decades ago. His Majesty the King smiled inwardly. Your Excellency, come, please have a sip of tea, sit down, and let's talk slowly. His Majesty Edward had a very good attitude, and he didn't care about the ambassador's domineering attitude, but spoke very kindly. As the saying goes, if you stretch out your hand and don't hide a smiling face, Your Excellency, the ambassador will treat a king of a country like this. And his previously stiff face immediately relaxes a lot. Your Excellency, the port of Ceuta was taken from the Berbers. How can it be said that it is an invasion of your country's territory? After taking a sip of tea, Your Excellency, the ambassador said in an orderly manner to King Edward's explanation, Your Majesty, the Ceuta region is only temporarily occupied by a group of heretics, but legally it is still our Portuguese territory. It is extremely rude for your country to invade for no reason. Your Excellency is too unreasonable to make trouble. We in England don't know whether the Ceuta region belongs to the Portuguese. Anyway, we took it from the pagans, but we didn't see half of the Portuguese at that time. His Majesty Edward sneered, without a kind expression just now, but with a mocking expression on his face. Does Your Majesty think that our country is easy to bully? Our hundreds of warships in Portugal are not for display. The ambassador immediately jumped up and said angrily, HMPH. The young king also stood up, raised his chin, and said dismissively, Our United Kingdom is not a vegetarian. In the past few years, if nothing else, hundreds of warships can be produced, or even thousands of tons. There are also many battleships. The strength of our two countries is almost the same. If we fight, we will lose. Your country does not have the English Channel. And Spain has been coveting your country for a long time. In the face of His Majesty Edward's making things difficult, His Excellency the ambassador was a little impatient, and he said loudly, Although the warships are equivalent, we have more skilled sailors in Portugal. Naval battles don't just need ships. Your Excellency the ambassador spoke the truth with some pride, which made the young His Majesty block for a while. Even so, your army is no good. His Majesty the King said calmly, Our Portugal has a lot of money and can hire a lot of mercenaries. Your army can't do it. We Portugal are united. Your army can't do it. No matter what the ambassador said, His Majesty the King still smiled and said a word, directly rebutting Portugal as a country where the navy and merchants occupy a large population. Not only is the agricultural population missing, but even the army is incomplete. With a population of 2 million, the army only has 20,000 people, and most of them are sent to protect the colonies around the world. The local strength is extremely weak, and its neighbor, Spain, has the most elite army in Europe, and the number has reached 200,000. What a frightening number. Therefore, Portugal would rather lose some interests than lose its military power, not even the navy. After all, the Spanish navy is #1 in the world. Your Excellency, I have a method here. I wonder if you are willing to adopt it? His Majesty the King looked at the Portuguese ambassador with a constipated expression in front of him, and said in his heart, Please speak, Your Majesty, the ambassador said with a little dodge in his eyes, and he did not see the domineering at the beginning. The United Kingdom is willing to invest £5,000 to buy the Ceuta region from your country. Moreover, if noble merchants stop at Ceuta port, they can enjoy the most favored nation treatment. Most favored nation, in other words, among all foreign businessmen, Portuguese businessmen enjoy the lowest tax rate. After hearing this proposal, Your Excellency the ambassador couldn't help but fell into deep thought. Your Majesty, I have no right to make decisions. Please allow me to report to the country. Okay, I'm waiting for your good news. Bingo. Mission accomplished. Looking at the departing Portuguese ambassador, Edward could not help but celebrate in his heart with £5,000 in exchange for the Ceuta region. The group of mercenary and cowardly Portuguese will, in all likelihood, agree. Although they lost the Ceuta region, the Portuguese, who have been lying down and making money, don't want to try if they want to throw their arms and fight the English, especially when their strength is not much different. His Majesty Edward proposed to buy the Ceuta region with money, which not only saved the face of the Portuguese Empire, but also made up for some of their losses, in particular, the subsequent most favored nation treatment comforted the wounded hearts of Portuguese businessmen. Under such circumstances, how could they not agree? Sure enough, as Edward had expected, the Portuguese generally agreed to the United Kingdom's proposal, but asked the United Kingdom to also apply most favored nation treatment to several Portuguese commodities. In this way, His Majesty Edward did not continue to do two things, and simply proposed that the two countries form an alliance and treat each country with most favored nation treatment. Subsequently, the foreign ministries of the two countries conducted consultations for a month and finally reached an alliance agreement among them. In addition to the most favored nation treatment, the most important one is that if an allied country is attacked by another country, the other country must unconditionally launch a military counterattack and automatically join the ranks of confrontation. Portugal is looking for an ally in order to prevent the Spanish from invading, and England is not only for Portugal's gold market, but also to prevent it from being attacked by the Armada in history. It can only helplessly defend and counterattack, and it is still fighting alone. This treaty, which is beneficial to both countries, was unanimously adopted by the two governments. Of course, in order not to arouse the dissatisfaction of a certain big country, the military content was naturally hidden and became a secret agreement. The treaty was signed in Lisbon, Portugal, known as the Treaty of Lisbon, and because the treaty began in King Edward's study, the Treaty of Lisbon is also called the Treaty of the Study internationally. The sudden reconciliation between Britain and Portugal, which hadn't even begun to appear just now, has left many European countries puzzled. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 493 at number 039, Better to be the king of another family. In the Netherlands, with the joining of the 20,000 Spanish army, the riots that had just started were dispersed in an instant. So, at this moment, how could His Majesty the King allow Spain to let go of this great opportunity of continuous bloodshed, and personally gave instructions hundreds of miles away: break the rebel army into pieces, abandon the big cities with strong enemy forces, and choose small and medium-sized villages and towns where the Spanish forces are weak, and move from one point to the other. Mobilize the vast number of small and medium-sized businessmen in the Netherlands who endured the exploitation of the Spaniards. Let them actively join the army and actively participate in resistance activities. Don't directly confront the Spaniards. You must adopt the spirit of fighting more and fighting less, fleeing if you can't fight, and fighting hard if you can fight, all with the goal of victory. In the northern part of the Netherlands, on a grain drying field in a small village, a middle-aged man with curly yellow hair was wearing an English gentleman hat and holding a long black cane in his hand. He exuded a special vibe: momentum. Yes, that is confidence. Gentlemen and ladies, we are all Netherlanders, and we were all subjected to the tyranny of that tyrant, who took away our faith, as if he represented himself as a Dutchman. His face flushed with excitement, and he shouted loudly with righteous indignation. 50,000 people, from 1556 to 1563, in 8 years, 50,000 Dutch people were innocently beheaded by the Inquisition. This is a naked, luo, tyranny. This is a tyranny imposed on the Netherlands. Tyranny, tyranny. In the small village, thousands of insurgents gathered, and they blushed and shouted excitedly: although the Spaniards have an army of 20,000 people, we have the support of 3 million Dutch people and the support of thousands of towns. Temporary defeat is nothing. Moreover, the English brought 2,000 matchlock guns and 10,000 pounds of gunpowder this time, and they came all the way from thousands of miles just to support the Dutch in their resistance against the tyrant. Thanks to the English. God bless you. The English will always be our friends in the Netherlands. When the more than 1,000 militiamen heard about this crisis, the English people came all the way to support them. For a while, they were extremely moved, and there were endless discussions. The Englishmen, HMPH, Outside the crowd, a tall and thin nobleman in gorgeous clothes heard this, immediately guessed his thoughts, and said with some disdain, "How can we control so much? It would be great if the English could come to support us." Another nobleman shook his head and sighed. Alice. The tall and thin nobleman sighed, feeling very helpless in his heart since Amsterdam was occupied by the rebel army. The wave of uprisings quickly swept across the entire northern Netherlands. It seemed that Spain's rule in the Netherlands was in jeopardy, but after the female governor learned of the news, she decisively searched Brussels and the surrounding areas, and arrested the Earl of Egmont, Admiral Horn, and the three leaders of the Prince of Orange. The Earl of Egmont and Admiral Horn were arrested and hanged, and only the Prince of Orange was also detained. The 20,000 Spanish army crushed the fragile rebel army at once, and the Netherlands apparently returned to Spanish rule. The two nobles raised their heads and continued to listen to the Englishman's speech. At this moment, boosting morale is the most important thing. The Englishman stood on the platform and continued to preach, emotionally and infectiously. This is the right given to us by God, and even the king cannot stop it. Surrender, that is the mantra of the cowardly, but the brave never surrender. We will win in the end. God bless us. God bless the Netherlands. God bless the Netherlands. God bless the Netherlands. The insurgents yelled wildly, shouting loudly, venting, and everyone used their milking energy, and their decadent morale suddenly rose. Even the nobles outside the crowd were excited to see them, and they couldn't wait to attack the Spaniards. This kind of speech, mixed with command and brainwashing, together with wine and food, made a rebel army of thousands of people revel, and put down the timidity in their hearts for a while. Naturally, the soldiers at the bottom can be unrestrained, but the high-ranking officers of the aristocrats who are in command must remain sober. Mr. John, we are very grateful for your support this time, especially for bringing the weapons. We are in short supply, although we need to pay. A nobleman with a big nose, with a smile, said politely to the Englishman who just gave a speech. England and the Netherlands have a long-standing friendship, and Our Majesty the King has long looked down on Spain's tyranny. This support is only the first batch. The remaining supplies will depend on your performance. The Englishman leaned on his cane, stroked his beard, and smiled. Hearing this, more than a dozen nobles couldn't help showing a hint of joy on their faces. This is the first batch, and there will be more in the future. This is good for everyone. We in the Netherlands will keep your country's friendship with us firmly in our hearts. Thank you very much. In this regard, the Englishman smiled. Non-committal interests are nothing more, feelings and so on are too empty. This group of aristocrats has a total army of only 1,000 people, but they are divided into 5 or 6 factions. In this regard, John was extremely reluctant to hand over the supplies to them. But firstly, it was the king's request to support the Netherlands, and secondly, in the Netherlands, which lacked weapons, the price of muskets was very high and profitable, which made Bloodblade take the risk of transporting them. Mr. John, what you said earlier is really a good way to divide the whole into parts, and to fight more with less. I think it is especially suitable for us in the Netherlands. Excuse me, who is this general? Can you ask him to teach us, or let him? He came to teach and command us. The big-nosed nobleman pouted, looking embarrassed, while the other nobles had expressions of approval. They were obviously very optimistic about this decision, and the proposed strategy was really in their hearts. I'm afraid I can't do anything, Mr. John said with a smile, apologetically. These are all proposed by our king, and I specially asked me to pass them on to you. It turned out to be His Majesty Edward. What a surprise. Many nobles sighed, and for a while, their psychology was extraordinarily complicated. Look at the King of England, who is wise and mighty, leading England to make great strides forward. I heard that he has captured a lot of land in France. More importantly, still Protestant. And what about our king? Excessive levies, only know how to collect taxes, but also suppress the beliefs of the Dutch people, wantonly killing Protestants. There is no comparison. If only His Majesty Edward was our king. The nobles sighed in their hearts. Chapter 494. The English in India. On the boundless sea, the strong wind gathers dark clouds. Between the dark clouds and the sea, petrels are flying proudly like black lightning, while Heian was flying proudly in front. Several Galen ocean-going merchant ships followed behind, driven by the waves, swaying from side to side, looking extremely dangerous. The Cape of Good Hope, because Da Gama returned from India with a full load, the King of Portugal changed the place originally called the Cape of Storms to the Cape of Good Hope, expressing his joy for at the confluence of the warm Mozambique Agulhas current from the Indian Ocean and the cold Benguela current from Antarctic waters. The strong westerly jets whip up rough seas all year round. Every year, it is unknown how many merchant ships sank here and fed the fish. The 3 armed merchant ships, one of which is the 800-ton Prince Henry and the 500-ton Desire, are Portuguese merchant ships. On the far right is a British merchant ship, which is struggling to follow the pace of the Portuguese merchant ship, moving forward slowly in the captain's room. The gray-bearded captain was holding binoculars, staring at the dark clouds ahead with some fear, and murmured, "Damn, I hope it's not a killing wave, murder wave? Captain, what is this?" The first officer at the side couldn't help asking after hearing the words, "This is the first time you have come to the Cape of Good Hope, and you don't know the reputation of the Cape of Storms." The gray-haired captain looked at the puzzled first officer, sighed, and said earnestly, "I have been here with Portugal several times, and every time I walked here in fear, for fear of accidents, and the murderous wave is the most terrifying wave in the Cape of Good Hope. The front of this wave is like a cliff, and the back is like a gentle hillside. The wave height is generally 40 to 60 feet, and it will appear frequently in winter." When they heard 40 feet, the first officer on the side suddenly took a deep breath. 40 feet is more than twice the height of the ship they are driving. It is really scary. This is not the scariest thing, but the scariest thing is that it also has rotating waves from time to time. When these two kinds of waves are superimposed together, the sea conditions will be even worse, and the entire sea will roll like a boiling pot. Passing ships 100 deaths. As soon as this remark came out, the chief mate's face turned pale. Fortunately, it was spring when they went to sea, and they followed a more experienced Portuguese, and finally passed the Cape of Good Hope, this time without any danger except for the captain and some sailors in the fleet. The rest had never been to the east. It was the first time they experienced such a terrible scene, and they couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. It seems that the eastern trade is still dangerous. This is still in the case of a route map. The first officer patted his chest and said in fear at this moment, for the first time, he had a real understanding of why spices were so expensive with such a dangerous situation. The price is not raised several times, and this trip to the east is really unwilling. That's right. Thanks to His Majesty the King's wise and mighty cooperation with the Portuguese. Otherwise, if we were to find the route by ourselves, I don't know how many people would have died. Looking at the calm sea ahead, the captain said with emotion at this moment. The first officer felt the same way, and his admiration for His Majesty the King emerged from the bottom of his heart. Soon the fleet continued to move forward and arrived at a port called Sofala, where the fleet was repairing supplies. If Edward is clear, then he knows that this is the later Mozambique region. The trading post was taken by the Portuguese from the Arabs, and then became a Portuguese trading post and an important colonial point for the Portuguese. Is this Sofala? It really is a good place. The fleet slowly parked in the port. The sea is wide, the berths are deep, and it is still in the Delta area, and the economy is very prosperous. The gray-haired captain took a rough look. The wide sea surface of this port is enough to dock 100 ships at a time, and it is an excellent port at this time. Dozens of pale and weak sailors were carried down by the Portuguese merchant ship, some of whose gums were swollen and bleeding. Hey, dude, how many of you have the disease of sea fierce? God, they should be carried down to recuperate, and they will be fine after a while. The stubble-faced Portuguese captain looked at the English captain looking around, and asked gloatingly, "Oh, none of us won the sea fierce, God, all of them are fine." Shaking his head, the gray-haired captain replied with some doubt to himself, "What? That's impossible. After sailing for so long, how come no one gets any strange soldiers?" The Portuguese captain shook his head and said in disbelief, "Yes, there is one. That's normal. A sailor has a broken bone." While Portuguese sailors endured the misery of ocean-going ships, England was amazed that England did not get any of the bad monsters of the sea. After a few days, the Portuguese realized that they had added a little yellow concentrated water to their drinks, and after drinking this, they didn't get this spirit of the sea. The yellow condensed water became the root cause of not winning the sea fierce. God, this discovery surprised Portugal, but the ingredients in it were difficult for them to know, and it was called divine water. In desperation, he could only buy at a high price. A bottle of Shenchu, which is enough for 10 barrels of water, cost £20. An Eastern trade has run off, and it costs hundreds of pounds to spend on it. These are all costs, and this sacred water is actually scurvy written in biology books, also known as fruit disease, which was discovered and solved only in the 18th century. In history, in order to ensure the success of the first Eastern route, His Majesty the King had someone concentrate lemon juice, and in order not to be discovered, he also added other fruit juices to confuse the public. Sure enough, the first voyage came in handy, and it also brought a new source of income to the royal family, a huge source of income. However, after a few days of repairing in Sofala, the fleet came to the port of Massawa in the Eritrea region of Ethiopia, which is also a Portuguese trading station, and saw some Ethiopian customs and saw this Christian enclave entrusted by His Majesty the King. Everyone went to find an Earl Isab and got in touch with him. After that, the people came to India, a port called Goa, which was the first port established by the Portuguese after arriving here. The English merchant ships stopped moving forward, not only because they were not prepared enough, but mainly because the enthusiasm of the Portuguese was exhausted, and they did not want to take them to the real ancient Oriental country, the country of silk and porcelain. In this way, they purchased a large amount of spices, as well as some silk and porcelain, and began to return. This was the first time the English had come to India, and the journey to the east was no longer in the foreseeable future. Chapter 495. The Pacific Ocean is no longer Spanish. Several pirate ships docked in Plymouth Harbor safe and sound, and the pirates were diligently cleaning the deck with sackcloth, and their movements were swift in the port where people come and go. Merchants, sailors, tax officials, and even dock workers all turned a blind eye to the pirate ships and continued to do their own work. As the captain, Drake handed out some of the gold coins as soon as the ship docked, and some sailors looked at the ship and let the others go to have fun. Prostitutes and gambling. Drake is not interested in these. He paid the berthing fee, and then went to find a shipyard, ready to repaint the newly captured merchant ship, make some changes, and then become a skeleton. A member of the pirates. A 500-ton armed merchant ship is the largest one he has ever paid for. Drake has high hopes for it and plans to make it the flagship of the skeleton pirates. There are many shipyards in Plymouth. After finding a familiar shipyard and negotiating the price, the skeleton pirate group will grow stronger. In a month after going so smoothly, he rented a carriage and came to the Hawkins family mansion. Since John Hawkins started the slave trade and became the first person in England to eat crabs, the Hawkins family has become more prestigious throughout Plymouth and the southwest coast. The slave trade not only brought huge benefits to the Hawkins family, but also brought great prestige, becoming the leader of the slave trade in England. Therefore, John Hawkins also married Catherine Gunson, the daughter of Navy Treasurer Benjamin Gunson, and became more powerful because of this. Drake once joined Hawkins' fleet, saw the real ocean, and became a real captain. After that, he left the fleet, bought a clipper with his savings, recruited a few familiar sailors, and started a pirate business. Drake seemed to belong to the ocean by nature. He possessed an indescribable talent for naval warfare. He robbed merchant ships time and time again and harvested batch after batch of spoils. Drake's father was a yeoman in the town of Tavistock, on the back of Plymouth. In 1549, the Cornish Catholics launched the Prayer Book Rebellion, which caused him to be exiled to Plymouth. So, at the time of his fame, Drake, who had no background, found a good backer, the Hawkins family. Although he is John Hawkins' cousin, interests are interests, and he will never be delayed because of family affection. Every time Drake sees the booty, he would sell the booty to the Hawkins family at the market price of 8 layers, and he would also be able to enjoy the protection of the Hawkins family, eliminating his worries. But this time, he just wanted to ask for support. Sir, the Hawkins family is here. The groom's voice sounded, disturbing Drake's memory. Drake reacted, and immediately got off the carriage. How much? 8 pence, sir. Drake handed the 8 pennies to the groom, and hurried to the Hawkins mansion. Obviously, the people in the mansion knew the gentleman's cousin. After waiting for less than 5 minutes, Drake was invited in by Mr. Hawkins. He was taken into his usual study, and Mr. Hawkins was sitting in a chair, reading a book. Oh, isn't this the famous skeleton captains? I heard that you captured a large merchant ship of 500 tons. Congratulations. Since John Hawkins personally led the team to carry out 2 slave trades, he no longer went to sea frequently, but instead started to run a family business, and he looked a little rich at this time. He saw Francis Drake coming in. A surprised expression appeared on his face at the right time, and he said in an exaggerated tone, "John, you're really flattering me. I'm just doing some business that jumps between life and death. Over the years, I've been really scared." Drake said inappropriately, with a wry smile on his face. "What? Captain Skeleton is scared. Are you ready to start a business? Don't worry about this. With your level, you will definitely become a famous businessman." Seeing that Drake looked uncomfortable, Hawkins made a joke, squinting his eyes and smiling. "Of course not. No matter how poor I am, I will not become a businessman who smells like money, dealing with money all day long. So, come this time, Mr. Captain, what can you do?" Hawkins asked softly to Drake, his cousin, who was standing on the chair again. "John, this time, I hope you can sponsor me. I hope that, like Magellan, I can find a new route for the kingdom. The Pacific Ocean is no longer the Sea of Spain, Since the Pacific Ocean was discovered by Magellan, the Spaniards who funded him used their huge sea power and the American colonies to declare that the Pacific Ocean is the Sea of Spain. Although not many people dare to repeat the dangerous route that Magellan took, Spain still said so. In this way, Drake decided to rewalk the path of Magellan, find that route, and greatly increase his reputation. You want to cross the Pacific Ocean and travel around the world? Hawkins asked in surprise. No, I just want to find the route to the Pacific Ocean again, and open up a new route for the kingdom. Drake said loudly with his chest upright. Do you know the danger? Hawkins asked tremblingly. Of course, but I know more about the benefits. I don't know, Mr. John, the patriarch of the Hawkins family, will he have the guts to take a gamble? Derek stared into Hawkins' eyes and asked word by word. Haha. I, John Hawkins, have never been afraid of anything. This time, I will accept it. Hold back the excitement in his heart, and after calculating the gains in detail, Hawkins said firmly, I hope you can come back safe and sound. Hawkins said deeply, don't worry, I'm not interested in the Pacific Ocean. Drake waved his hand and said indifferently. Subsequently, Hawkins sponsored a ship to Drake, £5,000, and 50 sailors, so that Drake was well prepared. He prepared butter, bread, biscuits, wine, and all kinds of supplies, and took the barber, priest, navigator, and doctor of the 5 ships. The largest was 500 tons, named Pacific by Drake. The second was 300 tons, which was sponsored by the Hawkins family, and the rest were only a few hundred tons. In the summer of 1564, Drake set out from Plymouth with 190 sailors and 5 well-decorated ships, riding the wind, and embarked on a journey that will become famous in history, an extraordinary journey to Britain. Chapter 496. Politics. London in summer, due to the growth of the population, presents a feeling of scorching heat. The heat waves are rolling, the traffic is busy, shoulders rubbing elbows, and the heat is extremely high. The royal family, nobles, wealthy businessmen, and even rich officials and members of the House of Representatives left London one after another and rushed to the villas around London for vacation. The same is true for the royal family. His Majesty Edward moved most of the court to Windsor Castle, leaving only the guards to guard the empty palace. Taking advantage of this rare period, the nobles of Scotland and England went to Windsor Castle to meet His Majesty the King and cultivate their feelings. Let the King remember himself, which has become the ultimate goal of all nobles. Since the official position was no longer monopolized by the nobles, the common people continued to rise, which caused a sense of worry among the nobles passed down from generation to generation. The rights that were originally in their hands were directly divided in half. Of course, His Majesty the King moved out of London, and the entire cabinet also enjoyed benefits, and moved to Windsor Castle, half vacation, half office. Your Majesty. The Normandy region and the Brittany region have appointed governors, and in accordance with the cabinet's established strategy, they have begun to implement land policies in the 2 places. His Excellency William Cecil, who has been Prime Minister for nearly 2 terms, is only 45 years old this year, but his temples have begun to turn gray, and the wrinkles on his forehead have also increased significantly. It can be seen that the position of Prime Minister is quite difficult. Respecting the old and caring for the young are the traditional virtues of the Chinese nation. Well, the script was wrong. It should be a must-have virtue for an English gentleman. Moreover, the king specially asked him to sit down and report because of his years of hard work for the kingdom. I saw that he was flipping through the copy in his hand, wearing glasses, and said softly, for this reason, the central government specially arranged hundreds of smart and capable young officials to go to the 2 places. It has aroused great repercussions among the people. Land policy is the most important thing. It is related to the kingdom's rule over the 2 places, so don't be careless. His Majesty Edward looked at the map of France on the wall and sighed. In order to rule these 2 places, France lost its Atlantic coast, so that France lost the foundation of a colonial power and became a so-called Mediterranean power. France, a country with a huge population, we can only disintegrate instead of annex it. What a pity, recalling that France has a population of 18 million, which is more than 4 times that of the United Kingdom. This made Edward salivate. Population is the prerequisite for the great voyage colonization. Without a favorable condition, regarding the fantasy of His Majesty the King, His Excellency the Prime Minister pulled his lips and showed a helpless expression. If France is so easy to annex, can there be 100 years' war? The sheer size of the population alone would collapse the United Kingdom. Fortunately, the combined population of Normandy and Brittany this time will add more than 1 million people to the United Kingdom, directly increasing by a quarter. This is much better than natural growth. Edward murmured, Your Excellency, Prime Minister, please pay attention to the strict implementation of the land policies of the two places. This is related to the future of the kingdom's future power. Turning his head, Edward emphasized again, Yes, Your Majesty, I will keep an eye on Normandy and Brittany seriously, please rest assured. His Majesty the King repeatedly emphasized that Prime Minister William immediately agreed seriously, with a serious expression. Land policy is related to the foundation of kingdom rule. The so-called land policy is to confiscate the land of the Catholic nobles and the Church, some of which are shared by the government, the military, and the royal family, and most of them are distributed to landless farmers with compensation, of course. With the implementation of the land policy, there is actually an important policy hidden. The abolition of serfdom. England was the first in Europe to abolish serfdom, while Western Europe was very slow. A large number of serfdom remained in the countryside, which was the basis for the huge power of the French aristocracy. In order to stabilize the rule, the complete abolition of serfdom must be carried out, which is also the real strategy for the long-term integration of the two places into the United Kingdom. Of course, all this is going on quietly, and the abolition of serfdom can only begin after the land policy is strictly implemented. Otherwise, the rebound of the French nobles would not be so easy to suppress. It's good to have a response. Let them know that not only the British Isle, Normandy and Brittany are also the territory of the kingdom. As soon as those bureaucrats were mentioned, Edward became a little annoyed. When selecting people to go to France, most of the officials shook their heads and refused without even thinking about it. Even the selected people used their connections to go through the back door, just to cross their names from the list. Such behavior exposed the inertia of the bureaucracy, and also made Edward realize a truth. The bureaucracy is a donkey. If it does not smoke, it will not go away. For the sake of the future of the kingdom, he dared to be lazy, and the young king was very angry. Therefore, the king no longer looked for those old officials, but chose those young and strong young people who still had ambitions to go to France. For those young people, put a big mark on their files, and they will have the priority to be promoted in the future. His Majesty the King said angrily, Yes, Your Majesty, I think they will implement the central government's policies well and add luster to the kingdom. Regarding this, Your Excellency the Prime Minister is non-committal. For a minister in a high position like him, he still has a preference for young people, and the most annoying is the smooth old official. After chatting about politics for a while, the young king began to care about the future of Prime Minister William. My Prime Minister, your term of office will come at the end of this year. Next, where are you going? Scotland? Wales? His Majesty the King returned to his seat, half lying down, and asked, with a relaxed expression. In Edward's arrangement, after the Prime Minister retires, he will usually go to Scotland, Wales, Ireland and other places to re-elect the ruling, so as to continue to exert their residual heat. Of course, what is more important is to bring the authority of the central government to the localities and stabilize the localities. Your Majesty, I am willing to go to Scotland. His Excellency the Prime Minister said decisively without any hesitation. Scotland? Are you sure? The king suddenly became interested and puzzled. Generally speaking, Wales is the first choice for the Prime Minister to step down, such as the former Prime Minister Faris Alexander. Wales is not far from London, close to the political centre, and stable and peaceful. After taking office, Wales is very relaxed. Your Majesty, since Scotland joined the United Kingdom, although Scotland has carried out reforms according to the agreement, it is not enough, and what it has done now is far from enough. There was a sudden passion in Prime Minister William's eyes, as if his whole person was about to change. If you say you were old people before, now you give people the impression of youth. You intend to continue reforming in Scotland? Asked the king. Wisdom is superior to His Majesty. However, the conservative forces in Scotland are very strong, which may be counterproductive and easily provoke riots. Edward said uncertainly. Your Majesty, do you dare to talk about the garrison in Edinburgh instead of the results of so many years of reform? Prime Minister William said easily. Also, don't you think that the Scottish nobility is still too powerful? After thinking for a moment, Edward smiled. Okay, I support your decision. Chapter 497 Proper Pronunciation of London Mandarin. With a household registration reform, in addition to Scotland, the population of the entire United Kingdom has been released. England has 1.3 million households and a population of 3.7 million. In 10 years, it has increased by hundreds of thousands. The speed is indeed exaggerated. Wales, with 100,000 households and a population of only 450,000, has not changed much due to the migration of immigrants and criminals. Ireland has a population of 700,000, and the Celtics account for most of them. Scotland is calculated by the Scottish local government itself, which is almost 1.1 million. The population of Normandy is roughly calculated as 1.3 million, and that of Brittany is 400,000, calculated according to the rule of the United Kingdom today. The total population has reached 6.65 million. This is a huge increase from the more than 4 million when the United Kingdom was first founded, but nothing can be compared. Spain, excluding the Netherlands, has a population of 8 million, while France, which has been consumed by large-scale wars, has a population of about 16 million. At this time the gap is still huge. The king's heart was bleeding. Ireland, on the green grassland, there are flocks of cattle and sheep, and the white flocks are ups and downs, bleeding non-stop, one by one, like mouthfuls of white rice cakes, scattered all over the green table, which makes people unbearable. I want to sneak a bite at this moment. Andrew was thinking this way, looking at the snow-white lambs, wishing to swallow them one by one. This is a lot of wealth. Wow, woof, woof. A piercing voice suddenly came from Andrew's ears. He turned his head and saw a few gray and white sheepdogs staring at him fiercely, their eyes full of repelling intentions. Oh, Ace, you don't know me anymore. I'm Andrew. Looking at the leading shepherd dog with a short gray tail and a ferocious expression, Andrew immediately felt relieved, squatted down, and said softly. The shepherd dog named Ace tilted his head. After thinking for a while, he turned his head and gave a bark to the subordinates behind him. Then he slowly approached Andrew, raised his head, and stared at it with black eyes. Wow, the shepherd dog barked again, and Andrew remembered it now, patted his forehead in frustration, and took out a piece of jerky from his pocket. Here you are. What a greedy little guy. Where's Leonard? Take me to see your master. Ace bit the jerky into his mouth without hesitation, then cocked his tail, turned around, led a few dog legs, and led the way, as if nothing happened just now. Such a realistic dog. Andrew couldn't help laughing at it. Following the dog, Andrew was in the stable and found Leonard, who was midwifery for the horse. The mare's high-pitched cry resounded throughout the stables, and a dozen or so nearby horses, who were grazing leisurely and grazing, also seemed to be joining in the fun at this moment, staring at them with wide-eyed eyes without blinking, and their mouths were not idle. They kept chewing, taking a look, and lowered their heads to eat a mouthful of grass, as if they were watching a big show. The midwife Leonard was on the haystack, with his head buried between the crotch of the horse. His right arm was vigorously digging out, while his left hand was gently patting the protruding horse belly, and his mouth kept comforting him. There was a small cry from the horse, and Andrew knew that the mare had given birth naturally, and Leonard's task was completed. Sure enough, after a while, a foal with twisted legs and watery fetus came out with the mare. The mare licked the foal's body, and Leonard, covered in blood and with short gray hair, walked away. Come out. Hey, Leonard. Andrew called. Oh, Andrew, my friend, why are you here? Leonard said in surprise, seeing Leonard, who was covered in filth, was about to give him a hug. Andrew immediately walked aside in disgust, and said, Hey, dude, go take a shower first. Yes. Looking at himself, Leonard smiled afterwards. Leonard, who has cleaned up, had a meeting with Andrew unexpectedly. Leonard, I haven't seen you in half a year. Your pasture is even bigger. There must be no less than 1,000 sheep. Andrew looked at his friend, who was full of wind and frost, and said, Tut, it's nothing. It's just that the recent market is better and expand a little. Leonard waved his hand and said modestly, due to civil strife in the Netherlands, the textile industry began to decline, and gradually moved to England. The demand for wool increased day by day, and natural animal husbandry made a lot of money. However, my friend, why do you have time to come to my place today? You are the deputy mayor of Wingar Town, and you are usually very busy. Seeing Leonard's surprised face, Andrew smiled mysteriously and said, My Leonard, guess what? Go ahead. I can't guess. Okay. You are so funny. Andrew said boringly, and then he smiled again. Congratulations, Leonard, you have been promoted. Because of your strategy, the tax revenue has increased by 3 levels. The county magistrate is very happy and has decided to appoint you as a member of the county finance committee. You are about to control the county's finances, much better than me as the deputy mayor. Andrew looked at his friend and said jealously, a while ago, using his literacy and connections as a former official, Leonard brought new orders to Wingar County, which greatly increased the county's finances. I didn't come from an exam? Is that okay? Leonard asked involuntarily. Of course, it is possible now. The county chief personally recommended it, and the governor and the county chief should approve it. Andrew said with certainty. However, in a few years, It may not be so. Ireland implements the county system, county town, 3 levels of rule, 1 level of checks and balances, and of course, those Kate people belong to self-government. Indeed, those who took the exam gradually moved from England to Ireland, occupying most of the official positions, and it is difficult for us to get ahead. Leonard nodded and agreed. The two talked while walking. Recently, the governor's office issued a decree, requiring each county to establish a primary school with a 6-year system, and all minors must go to school. It is mandatory. In the future, you can no longer sell salt casually. Except for companies approved by the coalition government, no company or individual can sell salt anymore. All Bibles will be recalled, and only the revised version of the kingdom is allowed, and it's still in English. Wait, English version? Leonard asked suspiciously. Yes. The cabinet gathered a large number of people. After several years of revisions, the so-called correct pronunciation was finally released. A pronunciation based on the regional pronunciation of London has been extended to the whole country. As a Welshman, Andrew naturally looked down on Londoners, and also looked down on the so-called correct pronunciation of Mandarin with London as the standard. However, His Majesty requires that all officials must be able to speak the London accent, otherwise they will be dismissed from office. Speaking of this, Andrew said with a sad face, and he couldn't help but infected Leonard, making him feel aggrieved. Yes, London sounds the worst. Chapter 498, Land of Fire. Clatter. A pirate-like man poured a bag of gold coins onto the deck, revealing an alluring golden color that intoxicated his heart. Hey, Big Nose, why did you pour out so much money? I'm afraid you shouldn't share it with us. A big buck tooth showed its intoxicating teeth, picked up a gold coin from the ground with a smile, and said loudly, ha ha ha. That's right. Big Nose, do you want to share it with us? The pirates on the side also laughed and said with joy, go away, I'm just taking it out to dry. Big Nose snatched the gold coin from the pirate, scolded with a smile, and then showed a fascinated look. Didn't you find it? Under the sun, the gold coin is only it is the most beautiful. The golden light is the most beautiful color in the world. That's right. Gold is the best thing in the world. It's like a devil. It's so tempting. The pirates nodded one after another, with the same fascinated look on their faces. Hey, it's been a month and we still haven't found the Strait of Magellan. Maybe we went wrong. A pirate asked loudly, without any intention of hiding it, even though Captain Drake was not far away. Resting. Although the clothes are almost moldy, didn't we rob a treasure ship? Don't tell me, the Spaniards are really rich. Hey, the big buck teeth showed a wretched smile, took out the pocket on his body and shook it, and there was a crisp sound, which directly accelerated the heartbeat of everyone. Don't think that you are the only one who has it. I also have quite a few. Although I sailed boringly on the sea for a month, I have gained a fortune anyway, which is not a loss. Yes, yes. All the pirates nodded, agreeing with this point of view. Gold is the driving force for them to continue sailing on the side. Less than 10 steps away, Captain Drake and his first mate were watching and patrolling with binoculars. Captain, what is everyone talking about you? The first officer put down the binoculars, rubbed his dry eyes, touched Drake's shoulder, and said provocatively, hey. No matter what they say, as long as you can persist, there is nothing to complain about. Drake looked back at the people who were discussing, then turned back in an instant, shrugged his shoulders, and said indifferently, the first mate, who had been with Drake for several years, had a handsome appearance, but there was a deep scar on his face with the length of his index finger, which added a touch of ferocity to him. However, thanks to this scar, otherwise, in the long and lonely sea, the handsome man would have lived a more painful life. That's why you robbed that Spanish treasure ship? I'm not lying, you are so brave. The first officer shook his head and said with emotion, after following Drake for so many years, he always felt that Drake was brave, but he never thought that he would be so brave that he even dared to rob the Spanish treasure ship. HMPH. What are the Spaniards? We are pirates, and the treasure ships are still robbed. Derek snorted coldly with disdain, and said calmly, a little pretentiously, however, it's really good luck. It's really a rare good thing for us to meet a single treasure ship. It's a pity not to get a vote. Speaking of this, Drake still had a look of joy on his face, feeling very emotional. Spain has operated the Americas for decades, and it has only started to make a profit in the past 10 years. It has shipped back large quantities of gold and silver to relieve its hungry finances. All, generally speaking, treasure ships were carried by powerful armed merchant ships. They sailed in groups, and very few were left alone. It was unimaginable for ordinary pirates to rob them this time. The reason why he was able to rob was purely because he was caught off guard, so he could hit more and less, otherwise it would be more ominous than good of course. The most important thing is that England signed a treaty of alliance with Spain, and there has been peace for a long time, my captain. Don't talk about the alliance between Spain and our country, just talk about His Majesty Philip II's huge navy. Won't you be afraid? The first officer tilted his head and asked curiously, as if he wanted to know the captain, how courageous are you? Let's talk about it when the time comes. Drake picked up the binoculars, looked at the undulating sea, and said with a smile, with this gold, at least we can get closer to our goal, the fascinating Strait of Magellan. However, the Spanish blockade is really strict, and no information about the Strait of Magellan has been leaked, so we can only try our luck. The first officer also looked at the endless sea and sighed in this regard. Drake was non-committal, and the Spaniards blocked the Strait of Magellan, the land on the west coast of the Pacific Ocean, and only the Spaniards set foot. Fortunately, His Majesty the King gave a batch of strange water liquid, which can be added to the wine, otherwise it really wouldn't last a month. Compared with Magellan, Drake felt much luckier at this time. 3 ships, more than 200 people, and a lot of food and drinks were enough for them for 3 months. As time went on, Drake and the others gradually felt that the sea was getting more and more rough, and their hearts were also tugged. The legendary Earth is flat, which is still prevalent in Europe, but the Earth is round, which is not so easy for everyone to accept after all. Only Magellan and his party sailed around the world. 45 days have passed, and half of the supplies have been used up. Drake and others have lost their patience, and the next supplies must be prepared to go back. Drake, look, what's that? It's such a big island. Is this the Tierra del Fuego that Magellan once named? The exaggerated voice of the first officer attracted everyone's attention. Although the specific route is not clear, the Tierra del Fuego, which Magellan once named, still spreads out. Yes, it is indeed Tierra del Fuego. Looking at the incomparably wide and vast island, this is the largest island he has encountered since sailing for such a long time. It can be said with certainty that this is indeed Tierra del Fuego. Yes, next, we will be able to find the Strait of Magellan. Drake said with certainty. Sure enough, in less than half a day, they found the strait, hundreds of miles long, 20 miles wide at its widest point, and only 2 miles at its narrowest point. After crossing the Strait of Magellan and arriving on the west coast of the Pacific Ocean, Drake did not continue on, but returned then. Not long after everyone was happy, Drake made a decision that surprised everyone. He will cross Tierra del Fuego. At that time, people always believed that the south of the strait was the legendary southern continent, and Drake wants to pass through the strait south of Tierra del Fuego to announce to the world that the legendary southern continent does not exist, so as to gain greater honor and let the world remember you. Chapter 499, The Disappearing Drake Passage. Thanks to the rediscovery of the Strait of Magellan, Drake's prestige instantly increased to the peak, and the sailors' trust in the captain also increased day by day. However, when Drake said that he would set off from the southern tip of Tierra del Fuego to continue to explore this unknown sea area, everyone was shocked. Even the trusted first officer hastily sighed in disbelief. But when this order was transmitted to another ship, Patton was taken aback immediately. He, who never persuaded him to give up searching for the Strait of Magellan, couldn't wait to board the Pacific at this time, and asked angrily, "My Lord Captain, do you know what the choice you are about to make really means?" Barton asked with a straight face, word by word, his eyes frightened with cannibalism. "Of course, my Mr. Button, I am very sober at this moment, and I am fully aware of the decision I am about to make." Drake didn't frighten him at all. His eyes widened, staring into his eyes, and he said seriously and loudly. The two looked at each other like this, the sea wind blowing their rough and earthy long hair. For a while, the boat was quiet. "Francis Drake, I hope this is your last irrational decision and the last time for all of us to tolerate you." In the end, Barton closed his eyes, lost the wind, and said lonely while staring at this personal assistant for a long time. Derek was not moved at all, with a calm and composed expression hearing Barton's dejected words. He finally showed a happy smile. "Good luck, Captain Patton," Drake shouted at him as he watched Patton return to his ship. "Good luck to you too, bold Captain Drake." Barton didn't look back, just raised his right hand, waved it casually, and said in a casual tone, "In this way." Drake turned around with a full face, and shouted loudly at the wait and see first mate and sailors, "What are you looking at? Not doing anything? Turn the rudder to the south and move forward at a constant speed." "Hey, I thought there was going to be a good show, but who knew that Captain Barton was the one who was scared? I've known for a long time that the captain will win. Who doesn't know the name of the brave Drake? Ho ha ho ha, I won this time. I'm sorry everyone. God bless you." Hearing this, Drake felt a black line on his forehead. He never thought that he had become someone else's bet. Thinking of this, his yelling became more and more serious. "It seems that you are taking it too easy. Who wants to clean the deck again?" As soon as these words came out, the crew immediately dispersed, like ice and snow meeting the sun. Without a trace among the 3 ships, the 2 of Barton and Drake decided to continue, while the remaining one, supported by the Hawkins family, naturally chose to submit helplessly. As they sailed south, Tierra del Fuego gradually disappeared from their eyes, and the weather became colder and colder. From time to time, icebergs could be seen floating by, which shocked everyone into cold sweat. "My God, so many icebergs!" Hit one and we're all done. The first mate put on a shabby sheepskin jacket, gasped, and said in surprise. His face turned paler and paler. "Yes. The weather is getting colder, icebergs are appearing more and more frequently, and the sea conditions are becoming more and more dangerous." Derek replied, looking at the undulating sea ahead. "It seems that we really can't find the legendary southern continent, and it's getting more and more dangerous." The first officer frowned and tried to persuade him. "Since the conditions do not permit, let's forget about it." Drake felt the increasingly strong westerly wind, and the sails were bulging and making noise, so he turned his head and smiled at the worried first mate. Said, "Go directly through this indescribably wide strait. I wonder if it can reach the west coast." The first mate, who was a little happy at first, turned bitter again. "Ha ha ha." Derek didn't feel sad at all, but laughed heartily. Then, the 3 ships changed direction and started heading west. The strong westerly wind saved them a lot of energy. However, along the way, there were many disasters and disasters. Hurricanes were commonplace, and they passed by ships from time to time. If you don't pay attention, the ship may be destroyed. What's more, the huge waves made people look pale even more. The waves as high as dozens of feet. Once photographed, the ship fell apart not far away. Drake, who was still beating drums in his heart, was still a little hesitant about moving on. When a major event happened, he immediately decided to turn around and go back. Captain Patton is dead. Captain Patton, the 300-ton merchant ship he was driving, and more than 80 sailors on board were swept to the bottom of the sea along with huge waves, feeling the drops of water on his mouth, tasting the sea water that was saltier than the Atlantic Ocean. Leaning on the railing, Drake closed his eyes. His clothes were wet, and his heart was full of bitterness. He couldn't forget that Barton had worked so hard to support him for so many years and assisted him to complete mission after mission. I remember that before this mission, Barton told him that he wanted to go back to his hometown and buy dozens of acres of land with his wife and son. Moreover, he also imagined that he would send his son to study and take an official exam in the future, so that future generations would become high-ranking figures. The bitterness of the seawater, whether it is taste or heart, Drake can no longer figure it out. "Captain," the first officer looked at the expressionless Drake, and hesitated to speak. "It's okay. I'm okay. Let's go back and turn the rudder back. This strait will definitely lead to the west coast." Drake wiped his face, took a breath, and said calmly, "On the surface, okay." The first mate was taken aback for a moment, then nodded blankly as the direction of the ship changed. All the sailors also showed smiles and cheers were endless, and Drake didn't care about the actions of the sailors, but he still looked at the sea and didn't say a word. After going through untold hardships, with more than 200 people on 2 ships, more than a month passed, and after avoiding malicious merchant ships one after another, Drake and others finally returned to Plymouth Harbor. This time, although they left quietly, when they returned, the news that they had found a new route had already spread throughout the port. On the docks of the port, thousands of people joyfully welcomed them. The great heroes of England. The city hall prepared a medal for Drake, and held a grand banquet. The famous noble officials in Devon County all came to attend, and it was extremely lively. After attending the banquet, Drake came to the Hawkins family mansion with the smell of alcohol all over his body. "Drake, my cousin, you really brought me a big surprise." John Hawkins hugged him warmly, and then said happily, "Barton Strait, that new route is called Barton Strait," Drake stated with a serious face. Chapter 500: The Breakdown of the Anglo-Spanish Alliance. "What? Barton Sound? You're kidding me." When Bloodblade said that the name of the strait that Drake explored was Barton Strait, Edward was surprised and said nothing. "Damn, when I first heard about a person named Francis Drake, His Majesty Edward was just surprised. After all, the United Kingdom is so big, and there are many people with the same name and surname, but when he heard that this guy was going to travel to South America to find the Strait of Magellan, His Majesty the King finally remembered who this guy was. The Drake Strait, the dividing line between South America and Antarctica, is the widest strait in the world and one of the most dangerous straits. The discoverer is Drake. In this way, Edward was really sure that this man named Drake was really a famous royal pirate in history, and he was also the main general who led the Royal Navy to resist the Spanish Armada in history. Finally caught a famous historical figure, and he is a great talent. Edward couldn't help sighing in his heart. It's just, why isn't it called the Drake Strait? It suddenly became the Barton Strait, which doesn't conform to history. The good Drake Passage suddenly disappeared and turned into a strange Barton Strait. The butterfly's wings are waving too powerfully. The king's head is not enough. Although a lot of history has been changed, this is the first time he has seen the butterfly effect after history has been changed. Go, let this Drake come to London. I want to see this great hero with my own eyes, and I want to canonize him as a knight myself. His Majesty the King thought for a long time, shook his head helplessly, and gave instructions to the secretary who is reporting. Your Majesty, the Spanish ambassador just sent his credentials. After a secretary agreed, another secretary walked in, bowed his head, and reported. What did you say? Edward asked impatiently. He was in a bad mood, and the Spaniard came to disturb him. His Majesty Philip I sent a request. The treasure ship belonging to Spain has been robbed, and the most suspected person is Francis Drake, who has just returned. And then? What are the Spaniards going to do? Spain said that in view of the alliance between the two countries, His Majesty Philip I requires you to hand over Drake directly to them for trial. The secretary looked up at the increasingly ugly king, and reported in a low voice, it's unreasonable. How can we England be handed over to the Spaniards for trial? Do the Spaniards really think they are God? When Edward heard this, his heart immediately burst into flames. Nominally speaking, England and Spain belong to an alliance, and they are also nominally equal. England is not a vassal state of Spain, so how can Spain have the right to ask him to hand over people? Isn't this an offense to the authority of your own king? Even if Drake really hijacked the treasure ship, he couldn't hand it over. A king who handed over his subjects to another country has the face to rule the entire United Kingdom. Reject the Spaniards. Just say that it is impossible for Francis Drake to rob the treasure ship. Let them reinvestigate. Edward directly ordered this. The secretary looked at the angry king with some hesitation, with a look of hesitation on his face. Just do as I say. Of course Edward knew why the secretary hesitated, but this is a matter of principle and cannot be compromised. Yes, Your Majesty. The secretary quickly agreed, and quickly got up and left in a panic. After the secretary left, His Majesty the King rubbed his temples. His head hurt like hell. Originally, the two countries had been in trouble because of religious issues. The battle against France intensified the rift between the two countries, and the secret support for the actions of the Netherlands left no room for relaxation between the two countries. This is a temptation. Edward murmured in distress. This is Spain's test of the alliance between the two countries, and there is no need to question it since France, the common enemy, withered due to the Civil War. The existence of the West Britain alliance has been in jeopardy, and this kind of rift has become bigger and bigger, and it is irreparable. Even if Philip I marries Edward's sister, this result cannot be changed. This result is already predictable, but it came too soon. Edward shook his head. The huge Spanish Empire is still like a shadow, shrouding the European continent. England is not yet ready to face this powerful enemy. Plymouth. After Drake returned to England, he robbed the gold and treasures of the treasure ship, and the total value reached £100,000. The figure is extremely exaggerated. After distributing part of such a huge amount of money to the sailors, most of it remained. These were the profits of his captain and supporters. Faced with such a huge amount, even the well-informed John Hawkins was still surprised. My God, this is definitely the most gold I've ever seen in my life. Full of gold, it emits a golden color that seduces the soul. Francis, this time, you've caused big trouble. Concentrating his mind, Hawkins stared into his cousin's eyes and said seriously, yes, I understand all the consequences. Drake nodded, expressing his understanding. However, you also have a share of the gold. Hearing this, Hawkins frowned. He was dragged off the boat, and he was going to say that he was tricked by Drake. He understood what Drake meant. He had his share of the money, so he had to find a way to suppress the problem. Let's go to London. Hawkins thought for a while, and then sighed heavily. The gold in front of you, don't touch it anymore. Send it all to London, and send it to the palace. You mean? Derek asked hesitantly. That's right, the only one who can save you is King Edward. This money is your life-saving money. Hawkins took a deep look at this cousin who made him so happy yesterday that he doubted his life, but today he made himself so regretful that he doubted his life. What a crime. I just hope that His Majesty the King can protect us for the sake of these golds. Otherwise the Spaniards will not spare us." Hearing this, Drake did not refute. After thinking for a while, he immediately agreed to the only remaining plan as for fleeing England with gold. The idea never crossed his mind. The world's most powerful navy and the second largest navy are besieging you, and even gods can hardly escape. It is still more practical to send money. At least, the possibility of surviving is greater than the former. What's more, the reputation of His Majesty the King's greed for money has been spread throughout England for a long time. When he was still young, he came out to sell wine to make money, and even open taverns. Then open a bank, open a factory, and don't give in too quickly to make money for the sake of the money. His life should be saved, Eric thought to himself. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.